Welcome, everyone. Let's get this show on the road. We'll kick off just by acknowledging and paying respects to the traditional Aboriginal people of the land on which we gather, and we acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as the Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to the community. Has anyone heard from Councillor Castro? No? Normally he's here right on time, but it's 1 minute past the hour. He's still so punctual. We will just continue without him for now. I don't have any leaves of absence. Would someone like to confirm the minutes from the last meeting? Councillor Martin, Councillor Curtis. So I've got a mover in Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Curtis. Is there any changes before we adopt those minutes? No? All those in favour? Minutes are adopted. Is there any conflict of interest declarations we need to make today? It's great. Awesome. All right. Well, today we're going to go through a number of programs. We have one starred item, which is the biosecurity programs. It's normally managed through planning and regulation, but because there's no planning and regulation committee meeting this cycle, it's been moved over to our area. It's actually a legislative requirement for us to adopt our biosecurity programs under the state relevant state act. Is there any other items that people really don't want to hear about? That's right. Can I get the starred item moved then? Thanks, Councillor Martin and Councillor Marshall. All those in favour? That's great. The team from Planning and Reg can probably head off. Thanks, everyone. Excellent. So today we're going to do a few different things. We've got item 6.2, 6.3, 6.4 and 6.5. 6.4 and 6.5 are presentations. In this committee, we've made a commitment that we will particularly for the new councillors, of which this committee makes up quite a few, we will try to have a presentation each committee or two that capture information about more broader work that happens under the directorate or under the different units that this committee covers. And today we have those two: enabling a digital lifestyle, which is about the city app, and some changes to that, and then the lifeguard update, which is done in a timely way to make sure that we we did mock you, Councillor Castro, mercilessly earlier. Normally you're right on time, but it's great to have you with us. And the lifeguards service will talk a little bit about the summer season that's just passed. In closed session, we have the Arts Development Fund Community Grants Program. Because the budget for that is now adopted, there's nothing in that report that would be that needs to be confidential, and so it'll be held in open session. And then we have a tender process for a new high-performance sports facility, which will necessarily be done in closed due to some of the commercial elements of that tender process. So let's kick off with the slope stability and rockfall update. Dr. Robson, what a pleasure to have you with us. Do you have a presentation?
No, Chair, we don't have a presentation. Happy to take questions on this one.
Awesome. Councillor Fowler flagged before she had a question. Before we do start on this, there is a confidential attachment that identifies specific sites. If your question relates to any of those sites, we probably should move into closed, but because it is such a relatively general report, we don't need to unless you are asking specific questions about those confidential attachments. So start with Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. So with the previous resolution, I have a couple of questions, but I note one of the resolutions was that a further update on slope stability and rockfall risk mitigation was being brought back to Council by February 2022. So could I ask, was a further report, did it come back, and or is this the first report back?
Through the Chair, Council, I think there was a report probably through the budget process of that year. I know we've provided updates to ELT, and there was my memory just escapes me, but yeah, there was a previous report. So
okay, yeah. No problem. And my question's just related to the sites that are in this report. So they're all in relation to parks, are they? I just note that in Division 2 we have a site that's in the budget, which is Cops Road, which is more near a road. So is that a separate area of consideration?
Through the Chair, often parks are named after roads. So, yeah, so Cops road reserves, and yeah, many parks are named after the adjacent road. So some of these sites will sit across both tenures, across parks and road reserve. But yeah, this work mostly focused on parks and other freehold land to council as well, but excluded road reserves. So I still pick up like where there's water reservoirs and things like that. But just because of the complexities of the work, we kept it sort of focused to parks and natural areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Cops Road landslip area that's being monitored at the moment, that's being considered in a different area of council, is it?
Yeah, that one is actually a road, yeah, and it's transport and traffic looking after that one. So yeah,
thank you so much.
Councillor.
Does anyone have any other questions? Yep. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Morning. My questions will be unsurprising. Dunstan Road in Robina. I note the remediation works has been done, but the site strikes me as a rather unremarkable piece of land to have a slippage like this at the back of a house on an established estate. And I know that it is due to heavy rainfall, but was this area watched or managed or under review for potential slips like this, or was it a complete surprise that this happened at the back of a residential house?
Through the Chair, Councillor, your observations are correct. This one was a complete surprise. I recall when my director rang me and said, "Tim, there's been a landslip in Robina," and instantly I'm starting to think of cliff faces and mountains. I'm thinking, well, as we know, there's not a lot of that in Division 11. It was through, so it was unexpected, and that's often the nature of this type of work. It is very hard to predict it. We've got some good models that we've developed with consultant geotechnical engineers to help take some of the surprises out of this, but there's always going to be unknowns. A bit of the history with that site, it used to be acreage, and so I'm guessing the size a bit, but they were probably, at least, some of them I think were even 1 hectare lots, but certainly at least, 1 acre and a half lots. And we believe just the compaction was never done correctly going down to the creek. Then that acreage was subsequently re-subdivided about 30 years ago, and then you had houses like literally within metres of the creek. I'm not an engineer, but when I saw the material at the bottom of the slope that failed, you didn't have to be an engineer to work out why it failed. It was not quality fill, it was saturated, and it literally just burst out under pressure. So and often you don't see these failures for a number of decades, unexpected, and that's part of the challenge in this work for us, is to try and get better at predicting where these things may occur.
The works that have been completed, their relationship with the existing landowner, are they comfortable with the works being done, that have been done, completed?
That's obviously there was some challenging times there, particularly for 2 households there where literally their backyards were no longer there over a period of a couple of days. I think they're generally happy. I think they've realised that we've tried to go above and beyond where we can. I think there's still probably a couple of little finishing touches, but some of that we're just going to monitor on time. But we rebuilt and replaced their backyards, returfed their backyards. They've got new fences. So we tried to, within the bounds of the Local Government Act, upgrade where we could, and certainly left the property better than it was before. So,
can I keep going?
You can, of course.
The neighbouring houses, which have similar topography, have they been communicated to as to what occurred and what's been what's been unrectified?
We've been communicating with the entire street there, and had. I think within that first week of it occurring, we kind of had a bit of an informal street meet where all the neighbours came out and we just sort of walked them through what we were doing, and being very honest about it too, saying, look, this is uncharted territory for us, but we'll work out a solution here, and we're here to help.
Just 2 more questions, please.
No
the works that have been done now to rectify the slip, does that mean that a repeat is close to 0 as you could get in terms of a risk factor? As close to, I realise you're not going to say it's completely resolved.
We like to use the word as low as reasonably practical is the...
Fine.
Yes. Look, one way to answer that, would I live in that house happily with my family? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there zero risk? No.
Yeah.
But it's certainly probably a lot safer now than other places in the city. So,
And just to, so this is pertaining to a specific property or areas in Robina. What I said at the start was largely unremarkable from a slope or slippage. Has this event informed the team around identifying other areas that maybe weren't on the radar for potential slip or stabilities issues?
yes, through the chair. Very quickly, yes, and I can unpack that a little bit more. We're still continuing to monitor that site. So we've got fairly sophisticated GPS equipment that allows us to look at any movement in that site. We've still got some concerns downstream of there because obviously it's a similar scenario. It's the same subdivision, so that we haven't got monitoring in there yet. We've had our geotechnical engineers look at it, and at this point in time, it's okay. But it's certainly one that we haven't formally monitored, but it's on our list of things to work through. And that's one of the things we mentioned in this report. It's a dynamic risk assessment. These are expensive works, so we try and cash flow them, but obviously safety is our number one priority. So we try and push the expense out as far as we can, but if we've got urgent works, it needs to be done immediately. The monitoring allows us to really keep our finger on the pulse with the risk level. And as soon as we start getting alerts, well, then we can escalate and prioritise accordingly. Other sites that might have an initial bit of movement but then stabilise a bit, well, then they can shuffle down lower into that list of priorities. But knowing that they're never really going to get better over time, there'll always be that slow degradation over time, but that just means they can move a little bit further back in the queue.
Okay, thank you.
On page 49, it talks about the 10-year plan and the budget allocated, and it appears that there's a little bit of an escalation over the next couple of years, and then it kind of gets back to a standardised number towards the end of the 10-year plan or the second half of the 10-year plan. Tim, is there reasons why we've gone to that figure? Like at the moment, that $2.6 million figure seems a bit less than what is planned over the next couple of years. Help us understand how you've formulated that model.
Sure, Chair. It's our best estimate. I think it's important to emphasise that it is an estimate, and that it is hard to predict that far into the future. I think part of our message in that was that we started with over 220 sites that would potentially need a treatment, would potentially have a risk that we could not accept. It's still a very big number. We know that at this point in time there's 33 sites that need some level of treatment. That number is likely to grow. I don't want to hazard a guess as to if I'm back here in a couple of years' time saying it might be 40, but I think if you just look statistically, that's a likely scenario. We're obviously hoping it stays at 33. So there's a bit of forecasting going on there. Yes, there is that escalation in the next couple of years because that's to do with known sites. We've got known work at Kira Hill, which we're completing, and that'll be finished by Christmas or the first week of December. We know there's another site in there that's big and problematic, and that's at Flay Court at Burleigh. That's an old quarry that's been filled in. So you have problems with quarries just maintaining the face of a quarry. It's even worse if you go and put fill in there because gravity's going to do what gravity does on that, and there's townhouses, and at the bottom there's townhouses and houses at the bottom, and there's a big row of townhouses at the top. So and already what I've budgeted for in there is wrong as we've gone through further detailed investigation. So it's really hard to price this work until you actually go to the market. So you can come up with a design which can take a consulting engineer up to a year to produce. It's just really complicated work. And then because there's a lot of demand in the market at the moment for this work across the country, that can actually have a big bearing on the price as well. I can't say too much about, obviously, the prices we get, but we'll get some contractors will be twice the price of others. So there's a lot of variation there. I guess one reason why we put that 10-year budget together to say, look, this is going to be expensive for a considerable period of time, or it's going to be a significant amount of money for a considerable period of time. That was really the main purpose of that table.
And so I think as I read the report, I got the vibe that, year 1 to year 5 moves between 2.8 million and 6.5 million. And then once we hit year 6 to year 10, it's 2.6 million. It really seems like that's the minimum allocated amount. And that year 6 to year 10 is much more likely to be increased based on actually the research and understanding of the hazards that we're navigating.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
All right, great. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on, obviously the report talks about responding and reacting, and there's more likely more sites coming online. I'm wondering how this feeds back into our planning for future sites. Does that inform approvals and maybe bigger setbacks or drainage, or how that's feeding back into planning approvals?
Through the Chair, yeah, that's a really good question, and yes, it is feeding back into the planning scheme. My team's working with Donald McKenzie's Natural Hazards team. It's, again, rockfall's hard to capture and map, but I think we've sort of cracked that, and we've got a good way of looking at rockfall and finding it, and we want to bring that into the planning scheme. So that'll occur through updates to the scheme.
That's great. Councillor Doran.
Sorry, I just had one follow-up from before. Works have been done at Dunstan. I appreciate that. It's all completed. Is there a plan to go back and review the works to make sure there's been no further slippage? Is there a follow-up program in place?
Through the Chair, yes. So we're still actively monitoring those sites. All our sites then go onto an asset management plan where the consulting geotech engineers tell us what the appropriate monitoring regime is. So I'm using monitoring in two different ways there. So we're still monitoring the slope there, the untreated slope there. We're also monitoring the treated slope. Plus, engineers do their thing where they do different sorts of tests and inspections. So I've been now working in this space since 2014. And as an ecologist, it's been interesting looking at geotech engineers. They're a bit like a medical doctor. They'll just go and look at something and say, get out of there now. They've just got that knowledge of what rocks are doing. So part of their work is literally just a visual inspection. Then they move through to dynamic testing and destructive testing. So where we've put anchors in the ground, part of that asset management is, I think, depends Julia, correct me, but each site slightly different. But we've actually got to pull some of those anchors out every 5 or 10 years and just make sure that the concrete that holds them in is still binding, they're still doing their thing. So there's a very rigorous asset management program around this work. So we're still setting up, but as we're setting up for new sites, we're implementing it at our older sites as well. These assets too, our first job was at the back of the Kindy at Miami, so that's got a 100-year design life. Our other sites have got a 50-year design life. So we're building these things as strong as we can because we want them to last. And yes, there's a fairly rigorous monitoring program because we need the engineers to sign off on these too, so they still sign off using their registration that the sites are safe. So that's a very important piece of this work as well.
All good. Councillor O'Neill, welcome. Did you want to ask about Kira Hill? Are you okay?
I don't think I want to ask about it, but I just, it is quite severe what's happening on Kira Hill, and I've been assured that that's what's needed, to keep it stable over several years. I guess the main thing is having how long it's going to take to revegetate. I guess that's what everybody's asking me. I've got a sort of time frame from 6 months to 12 months, but I'm not sure that the southern part that we're doing now is going to grow as fast as the northern bit did. Have you got any opinions about that, Dr. Tim?
Yeah. Through the Chair, yes, Councillor, it doesn't look great at the moment. Julie showed me some photos. It is a work site, and some of that geofabric, the white geofabric that's been draped over the hill on the southern side, that does make it look very stark. It also shows the profile. See, that site was quarried in the 30s. And we even think one of the original roads travelled around there as well. So that's why you're seeing that very distinct benching now that we've removed the vegetation. You can see all those scars from previous activity. So yeah, while it's a construction site, yeah, it's not, the visual amenity is low. I would hope, 6 to 12 months after we've finished the heavy construction there, and my restoration teams come in, and our contractors come in, we'll have beach bean and other native species growing on that face, and you won't see it. You'll go back to the way it was.
I know I've just picked the colour for the shotcrete, so I'm hoping that'll blend in.
What colour did you
I've seen
choose,
it blend in out in the valleys. It's landslip, work there. So I just picked a fairly dark colour, hoping that it'll just blend in and it won't be noticeable.
I'm colourblind, Dr. Tim, so I can't help you with colours.
Actually, the colour you chose, Councillor, they don't have in stock, so we've got to go back to you with another colour. I'm sorry. So,
do you have any blacker?
It's similar to, a male won't spot the difference in the colour.
It's actually three shades of grey that I had to pick from.
So beautiful.
Yeah, we didn't give you much choice. So.
We might leave that for a quiet divisional conversation rather than resolving it in the resolution today. If there's no other questions, we might just move through this one, if that's all right. Does anyone want to move the item? No? We actually have to do something, committee. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Wilkinson. No, Councillor Castro. That's great. Seconded by Councillor Castro. Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Anyway, it sounds like Councillor Martin hasn't got strong convictions. You don't want to speak to the motion. We're just going to sort out the slope stability and rockfall issues in the city. That's great. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thanks, Dr. Tim and team. I can't remember your first name, I'm sorry.
Julie.
Julie. Thank you, Julie. Just as a matter of technicality, I skipped past the committee forward planning schedule because there's nothing in our agenda items, so it's not actually in there, so we didn't address it or anything, but yeah, cool, great. All right, next on the agenda is the Bushfire Resilience Framework Implementation and Action List update, and we invite you back, Tim.
Yes, and Chair, we do have a slide as well, just to present the overall framework of how this sits within the broader context of our various strategies, and Tim will also be presenting on this. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got the one slide this morning. It's really just to walk us through the context of the plan, and then I can drill down into some of the specifics there. But obviously the plan looks strategically across all the city's leading policy documents. It has a place there in the council plan. It also, bushfire touches upon our natural city strategy. And it also, obviously, it's very important to livable places and safe places. That is across a number of our strategic planning documents in the city. Also, the Bushfire Resilience Framework meets our legislative requirements there as landowners under the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services Act. There's also statutory things in the planning scheme as well, in the Planning Act to meet our requirements there under the state planning policy. The resilience framework's broken down into three main areas. So the first one there is development in bushfire-prone areas. The city actually led the way in this work in 1998. So this is a policy position the city's had for literally decades now. And the city did that work in advance of a state planning policy and won state and national awards for that work. And a lot of the work the city did in 98 probably actually led to the genesis of the state planning policy around bushfire hazards. So it's a space where the city's been a leader for a long time. Obviously, a big part of the bushfire resilience framework is disaster management planning and being our preparedness there, as well as our response, and we saw that tested in the summer of 2019 with fires at Lower Beachmont, evacuations at Lower Beachmont, and obviously the Binnock fires on the edge of our city. A big part of that's the hazard reduction burn program. Even more importantly there is community liaison. We know that over the bulk of the hazards, over 50% of the hazard sits on private property, and so it's a big role for the Rural Fire Service there, and then Mark Ryan's team in disaster management, ably supporting them with the new appointment of a community liaison officer. And that's probably one of our most important tools in bushfire management, as well as the interagency liaison. Local disaster management group, I'll use the word has powers. It's probably not technically the right word, but through Queensland's bushfire plan, the local disaster management group talks to area fire management groups and other sort of apparatus of the fire service to manage bushfire risk. The third and final piece there of the framework is conservation. As we know, most Australian ecosystems are mediated and adapted to fire. Australia's famous for eucalypts, and we need fire, but we need the right sort of fire to keep our ecosystems healthy, and that also means keeping fire out of fire-sensitive communities like rainforest and other sort of moisture riparian communities, which we have a lot of on the city. So the framework's been, as I said, been around for a long time. One of its main purposes was to bring all those functions together within the city. Like bushfire's probably sat across 4 directorates. With our new organisation, a lot of bushfire, or most of our bushfire activities have been brought under Alex's department. So I think that really helps us, some really good synergies now with our departmental structure with EHR and what the plan's trying to do. So this is it's both a public-facing and an internal document. As you would have seen from one of the attachments, there's a long list of actions for us to do there, because there's always going to be work to do in this space. And it really just demonstrates to the community the city's commitment to bushfire management.
I have one question. Look, in section 5.3, which is on page 86, and the actual framework document, it talks about this working group, and it talks about the working group consisting of stakeholders that deliver the primary bushfire management mitigation actions. Who's actually in the working group?
That's city staff in the working group.
It's only city staff.
Yes.
So there's no third-party organisations like rural fire brigades that are in that as well, or help us understand how that working group gets formed.
Yes, so there's other working groups that Mark's team's a member of, and so there's the area fire management group that the Rural Fire Service runs. So we've been an active member of that since its inception about 10 years ago. So this document really is about our own housekeeping and making sure we're doing everything we can as a city, but obviously there's actions in there that say we will be active members of the Area Fire Management Group as well, which is our link into the state. And then Mark's got links in through as a disaster coordinator as well into the state bushfire plan.
So our working group is very much an internal council working group?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
As you can see, Chair, there's a lot of moving parts to the document, and that's why we need that internal working group. It provides us with governance and then that ability to report back to council as we're doing today.
Great.
That's a key thing there, especially under the old structure where we had a lot of different departments doing things. I think it's going to be easier now and more efficient with the new structure, but yeah.
Great. Awesome. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Fowler and then Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if there was a way that we could potentially receive a forward plan for each division outlining any planned hazard reduction burns. I just note that at the moment we have a hazard reduction burn happening across Division 3. It's very smoky across Division 2 as well. But does that exist, and can we get a copy of that?
Through the Chair, yes. Mark's entering the room as well. So, yes, there is a forward plan.
And sorry, through the Chair, we do notify relevant divisional councillors prior to the hazard reduction burns as well.
Yeah, we've got that notification, thank you. Yeah. It was more just like if you do have dates confirmed over the next 12 months, it'd be useful to get a handle on that. And I guess the second part to that is the communications framework for that, and the city-led piece and how that is executed, and I guess what councillors' role would be within that communications framework and letting our residents know.
Mark, you happy for me, Mr Chair? I'll talk to that. We do, and probably, Council, with the timing of the elections, it would have predated your election. So we do. Mark's team goes out either just before Christmas or just after Christmas, and we visit each divisional councillor where there's burns in your divisions, and we run through those burns with the divisional councillors. We then also ask yourselves, how far would you like us to cast the net around our mail-outs and our door knocking? It's hard for us to say we're going to burn on this day. We aim for 48 hours notice. Sometimes we can really only give 24 hours notice, but obviously we try and give as much notice as possible. But yeah, it really does depend on what the weather's doing, and that can change. So yeah, look, there'll be certainly very direct engagement with divisional councillors going forward. That's part of the annual program. Mark's team will probably come and visit you in November and say, here's our list of planned burns, and how would you like us to communicate with the residents? So.
Thank you. And Chair, just one last quick question. So who manages hazard reduction burns on private land? Is that QFES and the Rural Fire Brigade, or does the city have a role in that?
Well, through the Chair, the city has a role to lobby the state. Lobby might be too strong a word, but that's the role of the area fire management groups, that we're part of that planning and prioritisation for where the rural fire service is going to burn. But Councillor, I think you've identified one of the big, try and find the right word, I was going to say problem, but it's a challenge. It's, as I mentioned before, I think it's closer to 56% of the hazard sits on private property. And obviously most landholders can't run hazard reduction burns. Some of the larger landholders have done it. It's one of the challenges across the country, where, particularly in peri-urban areas, where you're transitioning from agricultural to residential areas or rural residential areas. You know, traditionally farmers would burn their land off every couple of years. That's not happening anymore. And so it is largely falling to the rural brigades to do burns, but for volunteers, that they can only do so many burns a year. But that's where the area fire management group coordinates that, and we have input into that. We'll try and do joint burns with the Rural Fire Brigade. Every couple of years they do a big multi-agency burn where it can be council land, national parks, Seqwater, and in the dams there as well as a good portion of private property. But I think that is one of the big challenges in this space, is how do we get more fire on the ground in private property, and is essentially relying on volunteers to deliver that. Is that the best model?
Can I just come to you, Councillor Fowler, before we go to Councillor Curtis? Just, it sounds like you were looking, when you used the word communications framework, it sounded like you were seeking, advance notice on a burn that might impact your division, and a set of relevant messages that you could put in a social media or a newsletter post that would help people understand what might happen in the division. Is that kind of what you're asking for?
Yes, but in addition to that, what's been done by the city from a comms framework perspective? So I heard the words door knocking and letterboxing. So what does that look like when we have a hazard reduction burn, and how are we communicating with residents? Okay,
awesome. And you guys feel confident that you can engage with councillors on that?
Absolutely. Through the Chair, what we'll do from this meeting is, as Tim pointed out, I think there's been a crossover between pre-election and post-election about the general notification.
Yes.
But the individual notifications at the moment, we're looking at 48 hours out, looking at the conditions of the approval. So we get an approval from QFES onto the conditions of when we can burn, as far as windows of opportunity. This coming week is a really good example of it's open big time. So the team are really starting to plan out. So you would have seen notifications again yesterday coming out. So we're going to use the next 7 days as a really good opportunity to do those burns with our contractor. But through the Chair, if it's useful, I'd be more than happy to, future meeting, present the comm strategy, how we do notifications, and then all the way through to escalation, such as yesterday, where the smoke drift continued on, and we ended up doing that specific notification out to councillors, where we work with QFES to put out a warning, basically to avoid smoke once it reaches a threshold. Be happy to provide that presentation if suitable.
Yeah. So would the committee find that valuable? A session on how we communicate about bushfire mitigation and smoke hazard? Yes. Nod if you mean yes. Yes, nodding. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Great. Sounds good. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair, and to you, Dr. Tim. I'm just looking on page 96, and we've got a potential bushfire hazard map mapping tool that I can only presume has the risks allocated based on consequence as much as risk factor. Is that so? Like specifically, because you and I visited South Stradbroke Island when it was particularly dry, and we talked about the risks over there. But it only sits in the high bracket according to the colour scheme. And I'm assuming that might be because there's less residents over there to potentially be impacted by a fire, or why would it be lower than other areas in risk?
Yeah, through the chair, it's actually a hazard map, so that it's based upon just the fuel load and the forest structure. So it looks at the typical fuel load for that type of vegetation. We're doing other modelling work that starts to look at risk and consequences, actually consequence modelling, and the city's been doing that for a number of years, and that's where it's sort of trying to move to the analogue of flood modelling. Flood modelling has probably been around since the 60s, early 60s. Bushfire modelling is actually University of Melbourne sort of developed the first ways of doing that, and we're probably that sort of work's probably now two decades old, or just getting into its towards the end of its second decade. So it's still, the science has still got some things it needs to work through, but we're actually getting a lot better at being able to look at how fire runs through the landscape, so we can turn that hazard map into a risk map and then into a consequence map. The other thing for us as bushfire practitioners, I don't tend, and these maps obviously have to serve multiple purposes, so that this informs a planning scheme as well as the work we do. But as bushfire practitioners, we know under really bad weather conditions, it doesn't really matter if you're yellow or red on that map, you're going to face a significant fire threat. So that certainly informs the work that we do. It informs how Mark's team prioritises the hazard reduction burn program and delivers the hazard reduction burn program. So I guess we've evolved that mapping to the next stage, where we are turning a static hazard map into a living consequence model. And then after Mark's team does the annual hazard reduction burn program, we can put that fuel reduction into the model and actually measure the quantum of risk that we've reduced across the city through the burn program. The static maps, you have to have static maps for planning at this point in time until the technology gets better. But that's not our sole way of prioritising our work. Because strategy, as we know, can have significant fires. Because
when we spoke, I understood that it constantly gets dropped off the priority list, and so through this new work, will it potentially get more of a grip and be prioritised?
Through the chair, strategy's remained a high priority for a number of years. I know Parks and Wildlife haven't delivered a burn yet. We had a meeting with the regional manager with Parks and Wildlife last Friday. He actually reached out to the city wanting just to coordinate our work on the island better, and I had a number of sort of managers and senior people from across the organisation attend that meeting. Mark was there at the meeting. We emphasised to the regional manager that this is a priority. He's very cognisant that they've been trying to burn it probably for nearly 4 years now. It's the logistical challenges on the island of having to barge across fire trucks and staff, and usually when they do burns there, the staff are there for three nights and things like that. So I think they're acutely aware. They manage 90-something% of the risk on the island. We've got some of the risk at the back of tipplers. I'm really hoping they get it done this season. So yeah.
That's great. Councillor Curtis, anything else? Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Bushfire practitioner can go both ways. Might want to clarify that in the future. My question
the good guys, Councillor Doran, the good guys.
My question's in relation to some language in the conclusion. You say the action plan shows that in most cases, each stakeholder is delivering effective bushfire management outcomes. Why are we not all stakeholders? Is there a particular area that we're deficient?
I think my team's the offender there, councillor. When I look, there's 9 actions there that they're being progressed. They're just not progressing as quickly as we'd like. And I think 6 or 7 of those belong to my team. So it's work we're progressing in conservation burning space with Mark's team. I'll take the lead on that. I've got some actions there around monitoring, both fuel loads and conservation. It's difficult work to do, monitoring with limited resources. I shouldn't say difficult, but just is a little bit resource intensive. So we've got a number of long-term monitoring projects, but I want to set the bar fairly high there and do more work in that space. So that's why I've only given myself a pass conceded on that. So trying to think what the other actions are in there. We've got to update some of our mapping. That's about the corporate layers are there. We just want to put that into a easier to digest package. Like my team and Mark's team know how to use that information, but we just want to make it easier for the rest of the organisation to get to. So the information's there. We just need to package it up a bit better. Trying to think what the other. We also traditionally we've done literally A0 based plans that sit in a big cabinet, and so the theory and the practice is all there. We just want to modernise that a bit and get that in an electronic format. So that's the other piece of work that we just need to finish as well. And that's in a draft and it'll be completed by the end of the year.
When you say A0 based plans, you mean an A0 piece of paper?
Yes.
As opposed to a digital format. Right.
I still reckon they're better because the battery doesn't go flat. So,
of course.
Yeah, when you're on the fire ground. So,
sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Doran, further questions?
One last question, and just as it relates to the bushfire resilience framework, how would you rate the city's preparedness for bushfire risk right now? And might be also a question for Mark.
If I was wise, I'd let Mark answer that. I think so.
You can do that, Dr. Tim. That's great, yeah.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So I think bushfire preparedness, the hazard reduction program is one piece. We went through a pretty frustrating period of about 6 weeks where it would rain and then it would dry out, then it would rain again. So that window that I spoke about was just continuing to close and reopen. We're now looking potentially at the next 7 to 14 days at a really good opportunity to get in. So from a hazard reduction program, we've got an ambitious program of 19 burns this year. So far we've completed 2. And we'll continue to do that throughout the year all the way up through to November. The early indications is that it's supposed to be a wet year this year, starting early. But it's some of the other preparations that we're doing, particularly as Tim spoke about and as up on that slide around the Fire and Emergency Services Act, with a lot of our engagements around our safari expos that are coming up, Mudgeeraba Show, all of the other engagements that we have, particularly in the bushfire prone areas. We're using a new fact sheet from Queensland Fire and Emergency Services around landowner responsibility under Section 69 of the Act, which is around reducing, Section 69 refers particularly around commissioner to direct, so they can direct a private landowner to, or council, any landowner, to reduce fuel. So we want to use that in a real positive spin to say if we work on this together with landowner, government, council, land and connect this up, then we can actually reduce it. From a response perspective, we prepared for a bushfire season last year. That was the advice that we were told, and we started to see that play out with fires in the north of the city and then around Tullabudgera, and then obviously we went more towards a storm and a wet season, but we did exercises with our neighbours out at Scenic Rim, so we're really confident that we've got good cross-border arrangements. We also sit on the Tweed Local Emergency Management Committee, so that sort of strengthens up from the south. So in the differing arrangements where QFES is the lead up here, New South Wales RFS is the lead in New South Wales, that we've got those points of connection. So I'm pretty confident that our bushfire arrangements are pretty good based on our touch-up from last season and the lead-in if this window continues to reduce from city land.
All councillors are welcome to come to the Mudgeeraba Show this year, 29th and 30th of June. The team will be down there doing some bushfire preparedness activities with local residents, and it'd be great to have you social media active as you take a picture of yourself and tell people how to be prepared in your own communities. Councillor Doran, any other questions? I've got a change recommendation that just tries to incorporate the request that Councillor Fowler made in relation to a presentation about those communication frameworks. So if it's okay, I'll get you guys to bring up the two items, or the two items that were in the original recommendation plus the third one. Councillor Fowler, is that enough to give you the presentation and information that you want? I think it's actually, that was an interesting font you chose there. Spice things up, yeah, I like it. Keep it interesting. Was there other things, Councillor Fowler, that you'd like to add or have brought back to a future committee, or is that enough to capture what you were seeking?
No, I think that's great. Yeah, just the communications framework, particularly in that 48-hour time frame, like what is realistically possible in 48 hours, but it'd be great to see. But yeah, my language would be for them to be presenting the communications framework for hazard reduction burn.
Yep, so maybe add the word framework after communication. Again, I like how you did it in capitals just to bring attention to it. Well played. Excellent. So, Councillor, do you reckon you could move that? Oh, you're not on the committee, you're a visitor. Anyone else wants to help out Councillor Fowler? Thank you, Councillor Curtis, and Councillor Wilkinson seconded it. There's no doubt that our city is well involved in planning for bushfire. So it's great seeing this being presented today, and thanks for coming back to reporting to us. Did anyone want to speak against the motion? All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Tim. We've got a general manager change over here. Tag team. Welcome, Jody. Now we have two presentations, so let's get cracking. Enabling a digital lifestyle.
So we've got a presentation today where we'll provide an overview of customer service channels and also the two key digital channels we've been developing. Firstly, the portal and then the City app. So we've got Rod Netterfield, our new Chief Customer Officer, joining us today to present, and also Kathy Wishart, who oversees the app development. So I'll hand it over.
Welcome, Rod. Welcome, Gary.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, so look, as Chief Customer Officer, I guess I'm, 4 to 5 months in now. And I guess I have the privilege of leading 3 business units, being our customer channels team, our marketing and external communications team, and our external stakeholder engagement team. The Chief Customer Officer is also home to our customer experience program, or sometimes I guess our CX program, it's more commonly referred to. So I thought rather than trying to speak to the great work that the team does, I've invited 6 of the team members to talk a little bit about the work that they do and introduce themselves and, again, the great work they do to support our customers and our community every day.
We're the voice of the council to the customers, and we're the voice of the customers to all of the arms of the council.
We're the frontline service for the City of Gold Coast.
Everybody is our customer.
All the residents, anyone that owns property on the Gold Coast, any visitors to the Gold Coast as well.
We are how the customer communicates with the council.
So he was a lovely 18-year-old boy that rang in. Touched my heart because he had just lost his only surviving parent, and he was ringing up on behalf of his grandmother, so he just inherited their role of having to look after his grandmother. It was just such a beautiful thing to be a part of. As a mum of 2 teenage boys, it really melted my heart to see this boy go through such a tough time in his life and then really step up to the plate and care for his grandmother.
There was this lady who lasted through queues in order to tell me how happy one of the rubbish truck drivers makes her son every week. I really love that I work for an organisation that I can have faith in, that when I'm communicating something to a customer, I know I'm speaking authentically.
I like to make people smile. I love to make my immediate team smile and people around me. I really feel like that if I can make people smile, it becomes like a ripple effect across the whole of the organisation.
The external stakeholder engagement team is what I would describe as a conduit. We essentially are the go-between the city and the community.
Is the connection point between the city's delivery of capital projects and the community.
We have the entire Gold Coast, residents, ratepayers, renters, business, industry, visitors.
Anyone who is impacted by one of the city's capital projects.
Taking an idea or a big project goal and actually delivering that and seeing the tangible result.
Is being able to reach out to the community and tell them all about the projects that we're doing.
We're the storytellers, we're the brand, and we're the creatives.
The voice of the city's main websites.
The Gold Coaster who sees our ads, sees our videos, and engages with us on social media.
We have 3.5 million users on our main website every year.
Typically, when people are jumping on social media, they're looking for information, they're searching for something, or they're looking to be inspired.
Make information easy to find and to use. I'd say one of our most memorable customers was someone who left a comment on one of our park web pages about was this page helpful. She'd heard about a sensory garden that was part of Cascade Gardens in Broadbeach, but she couldn't find any information online.
When we're helping people during a disaster activation, so when we're activated at the local disaster coordination centre, it's about sharing that vital, important, significant information with the community.
We contacted the parks area to get the page updated. We let her know that the information was available online, and also to let her know that there's another sensory park at Botanic Gardens.
Excellent. Thanks to the team. So the stories that they tell, I guess, are just a very small handful of the hundreds of thousands of interactions that we deal with every year. In fact, in the last full financial year, the team handled 504,000 interactions across telephone, email and face-to-face channels. Now, what we're looking at here, I guess, is so the top lines in each are the fin year 18-19, the contact volumes, compared to the most recent full fin year of 22-23. And so what we are seeing, I guess, is a reduction in those traditional channels, so being the telephone calls, being the emails, being the face-to-face interactions. And we're seeing, I guess, that shift into that digital channel, where customers are preferring digital channels or that online self-service. So again, the website sessions, the mobile apps, and the online forms and requests. If you're, I guess, new to council in the city, you know, our peak periods every year coincide with our rate bills being issued. So January and July is typically quite busy periods of contact for us. And July to September, we also see, I guess, a peak when the dog registration renewals are issued as well. So for absolute clarity, we remain committed to our traditional channels, and we'll certainly optimise the telephone channels, the emails and the face-to-face environments so that they are contemporary and that they're providing that seamless service experience that our customers and community expect. But we must recognise that there is that digital shift and respond by enabling that digital lifestyle preference that we're starting to see emerge. So with that, I guess our presentation today is focused around our City mobile app and our customer portal. So let's focus first on that customer portal. So our current state, our current portal, I guess, has some limitations to providing great customer experiences. And first and foremost, I guess it doesn't have that what's becoming, I guess, that community expectation around multi-factor authentication and protecting people's login information. So we identify that we need to address that. We also see, I guess, from usage patterns that we see customers are attempting to use the online self-service tools, but then are switching back to the telephone and other channels when they have that login and that password reset constraint. So I guess to provide a future state portal journey, I guess we've been on a procurement journey, and I think Jody referenced earlier that we're coming back to a future committee with a specific paper in response to an action from the previous council term. But to provide an overview of context today, the procurement journey that we've been on started in late 2021. And then following an RFI process, we went through a two-phase procurement process. In phase one, we went in search of a platform, and that was ultimately awarded to Salesforce. And then in phase two, we went in search of a system implementation partner, which was awarded to Deloitte Digital. And having completed that procurement now, our discovery, our design, and our build phases have commenced earlier this year. So moving towards the future customer portal then. So our new portal will provide that modern registration and that login experience. So it will have the ability, as you can see there, for customers to use, Google credentials, Apple credentials, and Facebook, for example, as well. And then once logged in, customers will have everything that they need in that single location and that one place. So, for example, you might have your upcoming actions, you might have, bills or payments due. You'll have a history of all of your service requests in one location and articles that you may have registered your interest for or that we feel may be relevant to you. And we'll provide service groupings for customers to be able to access service groups that make logical sense, and we've got a greater ability to control and use easier language that can be more easily understood by the community and our customers. In terms of logging service requests, we're really looking at improving the forms layout. And so if you think about people or customers that potentially are logging multiple service requests at the moment, there's a lot of manual entry and re-entry across all of those interactions. So a logged-in portal in the future will have the ability to provide pre-population into those forms based on the information that we already know about you. So look, this is all obviously in progress, but we look forward to sharing more with yourselves in the months ahead as we progress towards this future customer portal. So let's turn our attention now to the mobile app. So here's the dashboard for the mobile app at the 30th of May. So actually, I think, Kathy, we've got updated numbers even. It's just gone over 67,000, even in the last week. And we've certainly noted an increase in the number of downloads in response to the recent Beaches release of functionality. In quarter-on-quarter, reported problem submissions are up 15.8%. And top reported problems there being illegal parking, graffiti, tree maintenance, parks and gardens, and illegal dumping. The My Bin Day feature, certainly I know is a saving grace in my household, but we've certainly seen 9,800 customers add an address to their app in the last quarter, meaning that they're receiving that notification of which bin to put out on which evening.
Hang on, we're automating that, are we? We're automating if you put your address into the thing, you'll actually get a message saying today's Green Bin Day.
Yeah, it's the night before or the morning of, I believe.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. No, it's really good. And look, it's certainly it's been a saving grace in my household, and I'm sure hopefully many in the community.
I've got to sign up. Yeah.
Oh,
you should see my Google search history. It's like, what day is bin day?
Yeah. I did see an interesting one. There's people that are putting out lights to help people in their street, but yeah, we can just refer them to the app now, so that'll be great. So the Beaches feature again, which is what we're about to talk about. So it's been only in the app now for a month, but we've already seen 8,147 streams of a beach cam in the first month since that's been released. So let's get into that beaches and weather feature a bit more. So again, we've had a first bundle of features and functionality around beaches released on the 30th of April. And this is work I'm really proud to be able to present today, but it represents obviously amazing collaboration between Kathy and her team and Jim and the lifeguard team. And I think Jim's actually up next. So look, mobile app users now have the ability to look at today's weather and today's forecasts. They've got all of the beaches that they can look at in a map or a list view, and the ability to then even drill down into the facilities that are available at each location, and then to even go further to look at the live streams for the beaches. And so there's 20 there at the moment that are live camera streams. So if I guess after committee you're thinking about heading to surfers, you could have a quick look at what that's looking like. There's more detailed surf reports and weather information, and then safety information, obviously, to keep people safe on the beach, and the ability to initiate a call to emergency services should that be required. There is a little bit more still to come for beaches and weather, with the next release due very soon, obviously in mid-June. So customers will have the ability on the app to mark a beach as a favourite, to even add that then to their home screen and to share that with a friend or someone in their contact list. So look, we're obviously excited about where the app is at today, but probably even more excited about where it's going to go in 24, 25 and beyond. So this is just probably I'll call it the highlights or the headline features that we have in the roadmap for the next year. So we have information around city parking to understand parking locations, restrictions, and busy patterns. We're looking forward to providing more information about city facilities, so the libraries, the parks, community centres and so on. I guess enhanced self-service functionality is obviously something we're really looking to target. So similar to, I guess, what I spoke about earlier with the portal, how can customers have the ability to view information as it relates to their property, make payments, renew those dog registrations through the app. But the key enabling piece there is in the app at the moment, we don't have, I guess, a registration and login per se. So we can certainly have customers add an address, but it's not a login as such. So look, this is a really key piece of features and functionality we need to work towards in the next year, as it will provide greater ability for us to enable that self-service and enhance that experience in the app. And again, that leverages that CX Salesforce capability I spoke to earlier. So look, that's, I guess, all I had to update you on today around enabling our digital lifestyle. I certainly would welcome any questions that you have, or otherwise thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you for that presentation. It's really exciting to see where this is all going. I think making it easier for our customers to engage with is definitely a critical point, and I think we're getting that emergence of technology to be able to do that. It's great that you've just presented that roadmap, which gives us a bit of an idea of what's coming over the next 12 months for the app. With regards to the portal, what kind of time frame are we looking at? Just roughly, and trying to put you on the spot, but just roughly to see some of those implementations come through that we just presented.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Through the chair. So look, we're hoping to obviously have the first version or first iteration of the portal ready for our customers to enjoy by the end of this calendar year. So yeah, we're certainly looking to work towards something.
That's great. I've got Councillor Curtis, Councillor Castro, Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Would we be able to get a copy of the presentation? And I was just interested with the data about customer service centre statistics. Do they include requests that are coming through councillor offices or purely just the customer service centre?
Yep, so through the chair. So yes, certainly obviously happy to provide any of the material from today's presentation. Yeah, so the customer service centres specifically relate to the 5 locations that I guess we have currently. So it's not through the councillors' offices per se.
That's great. Councillor Castro.
Look, this is more of a comment than a question. Look, it's wonderful that we're moving into the digital age and making it easier for people to communicate, but I would just make the comment that it's imperative that we make sure that we still adequately cater for those people who want to pick up a phone and speak to a real person. I know we saw in the presentation there are people doing that, but it is becoming increasingly more difficult. I get no end of residents, and particularly older residents, but not just older residents, people who just like to communicate, would rather speak to a person or front up and talk to a person. Repeatedly getting frustrated that they can't get through, they get passed from pillar to post. When they get to speak to someone, they have no idea how to help them. They then get passed to someone else, they then get cut off, no one gets back to them. It's very, very important that we provide that customer service. All looks great in a video, and these people do a wonderful job. And some of these people have been working here for many, many years. But I just wanted to put that out there that I do feel that we're probably falling short in that area, even though we're doing terrific work on the other side, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
comments noted. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, look, I'm a really big fan of the app, and I've probably promoted it pretty hard in our area. But myself and Councillor Martin faced it at a neighbourhood watch last week. I think the illegal parking had sort of dropped off, and we'd been sort of promoting people to log it that way. So I guess it was more a comment, can we just get updated when something like that happens? Because we walked into some angry people where we were sort of funneling them to the app to report illegal sort of camping or parking, and then it suddenly became a 2-click, make this phone call, and they were saying, we were on the Facebook saying the opposite. So that was just that one little kind of pressure point where we were trying to funnel, I guess, issues that way. The other one was, and it's a bit of a total nepotism, total my thing. With the Beaches app, I was wondering whether there's any opportunity to, and it's probably for the lifeguards presentation as well, there's nowhere in the world that ever reports blue bottles or sharks at a beach. It'll be a beach shut, and I understand the shark one, and there's those apps that can tell you that. But blue bottles, the amount of people that the beaches will potentially stay open, but families will arrive, there's blue bottles, kids can't get in the water. I've desperately for years wanted to have something where you could click on a beach and the cams don't show it. Generally a board won't show it, but if you can sort of indicate somewhere that, you know, I mean, most people maybe know that if it brings nor'easters, you'll get blue bottles, but for families that are going to leave their house from somewhere to drive there and then find it, it would be...
So there's two spheres of your question here. One relates to the illegal parking information, which we might deal with that first, and we'll come back to blue bottles after.
So thank you through the chair. So look, certainly thank you for the feedback around illegal parking. So there was an interface change, or I guess a screen change made to the app about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So yes, I guess the illegal parking is under a different name. So it is still certainly there.
Yep.
I guess in certain circumstances, we're trying to encourage certain customers in certain circumstances for illegal parking to make a call into our contact centre, and that's just so that we can then act on that in a much more readily and timely way.
Yep.
But the customers certainly still can lodge it through the app should they choose to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So before we move on that one, so we're going to come back to blue bottles in a second, and we're going to deal with parking first. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, because as I understand it through the app, it's now vehicle issues and it takes you to parking, but you cannot report illegal parking through the app. You must call. So I don't believe, I think I've got the latest version, but that's what the community is saying. You can no longer lodge illegal parking via the app. You have to make a call. So just wanted to clarify that, please.
Kathy, maybe do you want to talk to some of the specific language? Kathy, cheers.
Certainly, through the chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, with illegal parking, timeliness is of the essence, and what we found through analysis was that it was better for the customer to make a call so that our parking officers could get out to the site as quickly as possible.
So just to clarify, you can't report illegal parking in the app. You're diverted to a phone call option.
That's correct. It's click to call.
Yep. Great. That clear things up? Councillor Curtis, was your question about parking or blue bottles or something else? All right, so we're going to come to you in a second. We're going to deal with blue bottles. Is there a capacity to add a blue bottle warning to our beaches app?
It's certainly technically possible with the help of our lifeguards who report that into their Envirocom system.
Oh, yeah.
Just, Jim, note that. We'll see you very soon. Councillor Curtis.
Thanks, Chair, and I think it's a question for you. With that presentation providing us the detail on how people interact with the city for customer requests, but it's separate from how they come through our offices, do you know if there's anyone collecting that data? Because, like, I note that there's councillors that are co-located with customer service officers and that would create a difference, and I just think some of that information would be helpful for us to better paint like how people interact, because we might see decreases here and then increases through our office space, and I just think the two need to be kind of looked at together to actually interpret correctly.
So you've flagged a really interesting thing, that the general call centres are receiving less contact, and if I'm reading you correctly, it's saying that you're saying some of that is diverted to a divisional councillor's office where the data isn't being collected. Is that kind of what Lucy was saying? Yeah. I know in my office we don't collect data on who comes through, but volumes are definitely maintaining. We're not less busy than we were before. My understanding is that we track data on how CRs are processed, but not contact. So, did you want to change that?
Well, I just feel like it's important data, and I'm sure, I know that the girls in my office collect logs of our walk-ins, our calls, and all that sort of stuff, but I guess if we're going to look at models where we track it, it's just as important to have what's coming through the councillor's office, because they're two of the same. It's still customer requests. It's still our customers coming to us wanting our assistance, and to not look at it holistically might be counterintuitive.
I think it's a fascinating question, and I reckon Nikki, as she's tapping away, is the kind of nominal boss of that space. The question actually relates to, is it possible for council law officers to track the types of queries that are coming through face-to-face and let that data augment what we're seeing from a whole of city perspective?
Yes, Chair, that is possible. Historically, we do track, or councillor support does track incoming calls in terms of volume. In terms of more specific data, though, that might be an impost on your staff to have to record that, but I can certainly take that on notice and look into some ways we might be able to do that, and Rod, how we might be able to work together to provide something that's helpful for the councillors.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. My question's probably a follow-on from that conversation, because I note Salesforce has been named in that presentation. So I guess for me, is it the intention for, obviously we're doing all this work to enhance customer experience, and it's all really great, but when we're looking at a customer journey, whether it be phone, email, app, are we mapping the whole customer journey no matter how they're coming in? And is that information going through to Salesforce? Or is it still, because I know in our council offices we're logging an objective, and how are we capturing it? And second to that, is the app integrated with Salesforce? Was my other question. Yeah.
Through the chair. So for the first release with Salesforce, we're just looking to enhance the portal, so the actual login and transaction process. There's future work planned to look at case management, which would explore how do we look at that experience end to end, but that's not in the current budget or process. So, but there is plans, or I guess a forward architecture view, that case management could solve that journey they take through multiple areas and different handoffs as part of that. As for the second part of your question around the app and Salesforce, they're not linked. So at the moment, the app's quite standalone from Salesforce. We are looking to bring that together, though, as part of this.
So is the intention, when you're bringing that together, where are you bringing that together to, or is that work not yet been done?
Not yet done. So we'll look at how we recognise. At the moment, we don't know you're an individual from the app. So whoever downloads the app, we don't know who you are. You put in your address separate to who we think you are in the portal.
Jody, do you think there's merit in all of the ways that we're collating this data and having it as one source? And would Salesforce be able to handle that in your experience?
Yes, it could. So it's complex, though, given the complexity of our IT architecture, how far we take that versus return on the investment to do that. So that's the challenge to work through. This first phase just fits that initial experience of login and the irritants along that initial journey.
Because I can imagine our customer journey map at the moment, and it's, it would be a lot to look at.
Yeah. And sitting below that is the architecture of the systems that add the complexity.
Understood. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis.
Thanks, Chair. And I just wanted some clarity on the illegal parking part of the app, because I too am one of the councillors that spooked it heavily, and now I'll have to sort of readjust my message, because the reasoning giving that the timeliness is so important. How is a phone call more timely than an immediate app upload?
Through the chair, currently the reporter problem for illegal parking is not integrated. So they come into the city as a request that needs to be manually processed into the system, which is what causes the delay.
Okay, so is there opportunity for it to become integrated?
Yes, and that's on our roadmap.
Councillor Martin.
Sorry, I was going to send an email, but while we've got the opportunity, if I could make a request that just in the interim, exciting about illegal parking coming online to the app, but just in the interim, if through the director, we could get some comms that we might be able to push out to the community on just the reasoning why it's either a click to a call or just call the hotline for now, and the process, just so we can share that, given it's a hot topic.
I reckon you do that. If you can create like a standard social media post that we can do to talk about it. And part two is when you say it's on the roadmap, it's pretty cliche. What does that mean exactly? Like, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate it's on the roadmap. It's a very council thing to say. It's on the roadmap. What does that mean, and how long away is it?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, we're building out the integration that we need, so the back-end part of what we need to integrate to our local government platform. So we're forecasting at the moment that we will start to build the integration for that in the mobile app around January or February in 2025.
Okay, so it's 12 months away. Okay. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Rod, Jody, come with me on a journey. There's graffiti in Rabina. I've just picked up my phone. I've taken a picture, 3 pictures. I've gone through and I've submitted a request. What happens now on the back end, please?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess we receive that obviously on our side. We then process that through and it goes to the respective team for actioning. So I guess what's probably in the roadmap that will help is I guess that idea of how do we then keep you informed with that as it progresses through.
You got me.
So just pause it. When you say we process it, what does that actually mean?
Yep. So I guess to Kathy's earlier point, so we don't have integration necessarily between the app and other city systems. So there is currently a manual step for us, I guess, on receipt of that from the app to then get it into the correct system for actioning.
So a council officer gets Councillor Doran's images and message in some sort of notification format, email or something, and then it gets separately processed through our request form as a CR or a NOTI or whatever.
Correct, yes.
Wow.
And
sorry, through the Chair, can I just add to that 50% of our reported problem types are automatically processed into our SAP system. So that would include things like graffiti, tree maintenance, parks and gardens. So the teams who process the work orders get those immediately. The ones that need to go into our local government platform are the ones that are not integrated yet.
So can we just touch on that just so we can get it really clear? It's Kathy, isn't it? So a graffiti request is automated or is not automated?
It's automated.
Right. Okay.
So the 2 questions that are still remaining is there a timeline that the city has as a benchmark for actioning the request that a resident will forward?
Yeah, definitely. So that we have, I guess, standard service level agreements for all of our service requests that would be there. I don't have that one on hand, but I can certainly take the question on notice and come back to you with what that would look like for graffiti later in the session. Yeah.
Thank you. Specifically on graffiti, and I do come back to my last question, Chair, it's really important to remove it as quickly as possible so we de-incentivise the action at the start, because obviously one of the reasons they do it is so that they can leave a mark and other people can see it. So the turnaround time, we need to understand that it's not any slower if done via the app rather than speaking to somebody, and the turnaround times would be important for, I think I'd like to know how quickly once it's, I think the director's looking to come in here.
Could you provide that to all councillors? Like the answer to that question? How long?
Yeah, we can provide how long with the service levels.
Yeah, not just Councillor Doran is what I'm asking, yeah.
We can share with all. But there'd be no difference between the way they lodge, whether it's through a phone call or the app. It goes into the standard process as it moves through the city.
Yeah. And just the final query in relation to my scenario is I've logged as well. I'm sure a lot of councillors have logged reported problems, especially during the Christmas storms, but specifically with graffiti in my area, there isn't a final resolution that comes back to the person who lodges it via the app. I think we're missing an opportunity in that space to say thank you for your, to show people that it works. Thank you for lodging reporting the problem as per that section of the app. The pothole has been fixed today. Celebrate Councillor Doran, or whatever the end bit is.
Yeah. Yeah. So through the Chair, certainly look, that is on the roadmap, and I agree that there is a need for us to better close the loop and keep residents and councillors informed about the status of their requests as we go through those. Yeah.
I was joking a bit about the Councillor Doran, but I think the person who's reporting...
You don't want a personalised message with every app request that comes through Division 11? Let's be really clear about that. How many notifications do you want to get in a day?
Come on, get control. No, no, just whoever reports it, I feel like there needs to be an email or a notification back to say that it's been resolved or it's been actioned. That's all. Thanks.
That's great. Any other questions? Councillor Mutton.
Just a well done on the evolution of the app and obviously that beaches surf cam integration, really popular. Not so much with some locals that wanted to keep it to themselves, but yeah, really exciting to see that progression. So well done.
Councillor Curtis.
Is the inclusion of events on the roadmap?
Through the chair. So events is not probably currently on the roadmap. I do note we have a new events website that's just gone live, what's on goldcoast.au, which I guess centralises all that events information. That's coming to, I guess, a future ETEC committee. So, yeah.
So in the data you talked about the how people are changing their methods of engaging with us, and you showed us that there's almost 100,000 less phone calls coming through. I think it was like 460 to 312 or something like that. And you also saw, there's a 0.5% or 50% reduction in face-to-face engagements, but there's a 400,000 increase in extra website sessions. How long is a session and how many pages do people go to?
Look, I'll probably have to take that as a question on notice. I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Awesome. Are we cool to note the presentation? I'm happy to receive and note the presentation. Does anyone want to second that? Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you for your presentation today. I really appreciate it. And Kathy, thanks for your work as well. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Let's talk about lifeguards. We're sorry you had to wear a suit today instead of lifeguard outfit. Sorry, mate.
So just as a way of introduction, so we've got Jim Dixon, our Manager for Lifeguard Services, joining today, Kate McLeod, General Manager Communities, and our Acting Chief Lifeguard, Will Ashley, so welcome. We're just going to provide an overview of lifeguard services, a very popular and well-respected service across the city, but for some of the councils recognised, perhaps not on your front door. Jim will give a bit of an overview of the service, in particular what we've done in the last year around reducing incidences on the beach.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. As Jody alluded to, I'm joined by our Acting Chief Lifeguard, Will Ashley. We wanted to give you some insights into our operation and also sort of share some of our priority areas as we move into the next 12 months. Before I do that, I wanted to introduce you to some of our team and possibly give you some safety messages for your next trip to the beach.
Welcome to the Gold Coast, Australia. We have some of the best beaches in the world.
Made up of 52 kilometres of white sand, amazing surf and crystal clear waters.
We welcome over 12 million visitors every year.
Not to mention our friendly local residents.
And we're here to help.
It's our job to keep Gold Coast beaches safe by patrolling 365 days a year.
Our team of professional lifeguards are among the fittest in the world.
We swim, run and paddle to make sure that we're at our peak fitness.
We understand the ocean.
And we understand how to keep you safe. So on your next holiday,
always swim between the red and yellow flags.
Always listen to advice from the lifeguards and lifesavers.
And most importantly, never swim at night.
If you find yourself in difficulty while swimming, do not panic. Raise one arm in the air and signal for assistance.
On behalf of the lifeguard team, we look forward to seeing you on our world-famous beaches.
I'm pretty sure I've got
already.
Big pardon?
I feel safer already.
I think I've got probably the best job in council, leading the best team in council. They've been around a long time. The service commenced in 1935, patrolling 3 locations. We are the state's designated land manager for our oceans and beaches. We operate now across 43 locations, or towers as we call them, and unlike the video, we now we now have 20 million visitors annually coming to our beaches. We also manage and provide the lifeguard service for our 4 city facilities, our aquatic centres. What we do and how we manage that environment is by instigating the local Law 10, which is the one that relates to the beaches and the foreshore. So, as I said before, we've got 43 locations that are patrolled throughout the year, so from September to May and all of the school holidays. We've got 28 beaches that we patrol through the winter months, which runs from May to August, and then our pools are open 363 days a year. So what does a day in the life of a lifeguard look like? It's not just about looking at the water and keeping an eye on those bathers that are in the water itself. We're providing crucial data back to our operations centre and for our colleagues across the city for things like our beach condition, what sort of users are utilising our beaches, their training. They have 2 biannual fitness tests, which are incredibly rigorous. I participated in one last winter, and I'll never do that again, I can assure you of that. But I was trying to get a bit of street cred, and it didn't go too well. But no, they're incredibly fit bunch of people, as you'd expect. I'll give you some insights a little bit later, but public engagement is a significant part of their role, as you appreciate. Things like, where can I buy a surfboard, to how is the water today and is it safe to swim, etc., etc. We run a surf safety education program, and I'll give you some insights into that towards the end of the presentation as well. We've made some big changes in how we go about that part of our business and how we engage with the public. We also are responsible for all of our pool quality testing and dosing every day. This can take on sort of significant importance around international and national swimming meets as well, so there's a science to it. We've got a great team who deliver that through the lifeguard service. We do a lot of media, as I'm sure you are aware. Our chief lifeguard, Will, is on television and radio every day, talking to our community, to our visitors, and explaining what the conditions are like and where the best place to go is on the coast. We support our beach events team with beach safety, and also, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, our aquatics lifeguards support with the delivery of major events throughout the international and national calendars for aquatics. So what have we been focusing on over the last 18 months? There's obviously been a big change come about through the restructure, where we've integrated and amalgamated all of our beach and aquatic lifeguards into one service. For me, this has been a tremendous opportunity. We're really enjoying that process, and I think it's for the betterment of our community and for the service itself. We've put a lot of focus on technology. There's a huge move towards being able to collect data, share that data, and support the other areas of council and be able to provide some of those insights to the community. We've created an asset management reporting system as well. So, as you appreciate, we've got a large inventory of infrastructure across the coastline in a very harsh environment, and it's really important that we know the status of that particular infrastructure and able to keep that online. It's very visible to the public, so we want to make sure that we look good for people who come down to visit our beaches. We've got 2 new patrol locations that have just come online, so this is an outcome of obviously insights and data insights into our visitation, but also areas of the coast that have become problematic and are dangerous. So we've got a new tower at Alexandra Avenue, just towards the end of Hedges Avenue, and then SeaWorld Nara, where we'd a very exposed part of the coast, which draws a particular demographic to swim there and recreate there. So it was important to get some more coverage in there, and we're very pleased to have been able to do that. I'll give you a bit of an oversight shortly about the surf safety campaign, but like I said earlier, we've made a big change there in how we engage with the public. It was a bit of a broken record, we felt, and we challenged ourselves to come up with a new way of engaging with the critical demographics and make those impactful statements to get them aware of the environments that they are entering. And the last one, an outcome of the budget last year, which was hugely welcomed on our side, was an increase of surveillance hours of around 8,000, and all of that delivered in our peak season. Obviously, as the numbers will soon show you, we're getting very, very busy, and having that additional surveillance time on the beaches through our peak season has been really welcomed by the team. We've got a lot of partners that we work with, and I just wanted to call out two of those in particular. Surf Lifesaving Queensland are a supporting partner of ours. We obviously have a network of clubs across the coastline, and those clubs work with us through our peak seasons to help us deliver during our peak time. So just to give you some perspective, the surf clubs provide about 15% of our surveillance coverage across the year, and that's delivered weekends and public holidays during peak season. The other big partner, obviously externally, that we work with every day is the QPS and the QAS. Unfortunately, obviously, we have to engage with those two entities to deal with challenging circumstances and sometimes tragic circumstances on our beaches. So we've got a really strong relationship with those two entities and help us to deliver the service on behalf of the Gold Coast. Internally, we deal with some great teams. I just wanted to highlight some of those. The beaches team in particular, we work with very closely. We share and support on data analysis of how people are engaging with the beach, what amenities they're accessing. We share that information between the two areas to help inform us on how we operate and strategically where we go next with our services. And our PSLO network, obviously, we're dealing with challenging individuals throughout the city from time to time, and they've been incredibly helpful working with our lifeguards to get safe outcomes for the community. And then our animal management team and our city events teams. Everybody wants to have events on the Gold Coast and everybody wants to have events on our beaches. Some of those can be very challenging to deliver, and I'm really proud of the input that the lifeguards provide to help deliver some of those events. So I just wanted to give you some insights into the growth that we're seeing in relation to visitation to the beach. So since 2015, we've seen a massive shift in the amount of people that are visiting our beaches and engaging with our lifeguards. As the number shows you there, it's pretty substantial. So put that into context, we were having around 9 million visitors on our beaches in 2015, and over the decade, we've seen that grow to 20 million just at the end of this last summer period. I just wanted to break down and show you some insights into how those people engage with our lifeguards. So obviously there's often a real focus on the rescues and the preventative actions taken by the lifeguards, but there's far more to their engagement than that. We obviously work closely on bylaw enforcements and regulation, and the big numbers, which you'll see in a moment, or proportionately the amount of time they spend working on the beach is about supporting people and getting information and access to amenities and enjoying their time while they're on the Gold Coast. So just to frame that out slightly differently, that orange portion there, or the large yellow portion, is all about public relations. So they are, in our minds, one of the critical ambassadors for the Gold Coast. They are the people that people want to engage with, but they're asking all sorts of information. Like I said earlier, where do I buy a surfboard? Where do I, get something to eat? Where's the nearest amenities for washing up and so forth? We're very excited about the work that Rod's team's been doing around the app. We've been really willing and wanting to support with that development. It's a tremendous tool for the community. For us, we see it as a great platform to share safety messaging and initiatives. So yeah, very excited about that, and it's going to help our lifeguards to better support visitors to the coast. So where does that information end up? We've got an operations centre in Burleigh, which is the hub, or the heartbeat, I guess, of how things happen and where things happen. So myself and the rest of the leadership team are based out of Burleigh. We have a dashboard that you can see live in our office, which also has the integrated camera network as a part of that. And the lifeguards are reporting into this app 3 times a day: beach conditions, jellyfish, etc., etc. Many variables are reported into this dashboard, and we've got a traffic light system which allows us to understand where pressure points are, where stress points are, where dangerous conditions are occurring along the coastline, and our leadership team are able to respond accordingly, live in the day, make amendments to where staff are deployed to, potentially where we need to close beaches and so on and so forth. So it's been a tremendous tool to support the team and to support the leadership group as well. I wanted to make special reference to our aquatics team. We focus a lot, I think, on the lifeguards out on the beaches, but our team is more than that. The aquatics lifeguards do a tremendous job in supporting the patrons that visit our venues. It's been a great opportunity to amalgamate our services and provide career opportunities for our staff to transition between the two realms. I think that's a positive and proactive step for the city. We've got an ageing workforce, dare I say it, on the ocean side, and they're all looking for opportunities to further their careers and extend their careers and provide a contribution to the community in a slightly different way to what they have before. I just wanted to highlight the Platinum Pools program. So this is delivered by our peak body, Royal Life Saving. For the aquatic side of the business, we have two peak bodies, the Professional Ocean Lifeguard Association and then our Royal Life Saving, who are the aquatics peak body. This is a best practice program which has been introduced in Australia in the last few years. Currently there's no municipalities or councils within Queensland that have achieved this status. It is about best practice, customer engagement, safety standards, and best practices in the safety space. And I'm really pleased to share that all of our three current operating city pools have achieved the platinum status last week. We're the first locations in Queensland to achieve this status. So it's a huge testament to the work of our aquatics staff and our aquatics team, and I think it's a great seal of approval for the city to hang our hat on as well. Lastly, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview into the surf safety campaign that we started 2 years ago. We've just finished our second summer running this program. We obviously have through the incidents that we see and the data we can capture on utilisation of our beaches and where those people are travelling from, an ability to target our campaigns at those stress points on our beaches. So no surprise that 18 to 30-year-old males are a high-risk category for drowning right across Australia. Our domestic day trip visitors, so people coming from outside of the city driving down to the coast to enjoy our beaches, which aren't necessarily familiar with our conditions, our interstate visitors and visitors from our core markets, Japan, China, Germany, France, India, Spain and Brazil. So what we've been able to do is tailor our campaigning to meet those particular demographics. You might have seen the bollard covers that have gone in the Surfers Paradise. It's the first time we've ever done something like this in our major tourist precinct. It's been incredibly well received across our social media platforms and through our interaction with our visitors. Their ability to understand and clearly hear the messages in their own language has been really well received. I just wanted to give you a taste of some of the social media campaign we did as well. So we put together, through the insights, engaging with the community and with international visitors through the international university programming, how do we capture the attention of these demographics and what is the most impactful way to engage them in that education content. And it's not having a sign on the beach and banging the drum as we come down to swim between the red and yellow flags. It's about serving up that content to them across all of our social media platforms as they enter this precinct of the City of Gold Coast. And this is an example of what we've done. I dare say that none of you in this room have seen any of this content before because you're obviously not part of that risk demographic. I haven't seen it either until the corporate comms team showed it to us offline. So,
you under 30, mate? Oh, you're over 30. He's just babyface. I wasn't sure. Sorry.
So very short, succinct, and that was played off across multiple platforms and multiple languages throughout the summer. This program's actually been nominated for the 2024 Australian Marketing Awards, so we're waiting to find out the result of that. I believe it's going to be in August, so we're crossing our fingers for our friends in the Corp Comms team that they get this outcome because a hell of a lot of work went into developing the content, going through the insights process to support us, and we're really grateful for what they provided us.
Jim, what does the hiragana actually read? Like the Japanese characters?
Always swim between the red and yellow flags.
That's it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, very simple. I just wanted to highlight, obviously, we've just come off the back of, for the first time in a very long time, we had no drownings in our summer season.
Well played.
Thank you. We don't take all the credit for that. There are a number of factors that come into play to achieve that type of outcome. It's the collaboration with our, Surf Lifesaving Club partnerships. It's the real diligence of the team. But ultimately, we believe that all of these factors sort of together have played a really vital role in getting this outcome. We really don't focus on that particular statistic a lot in our service. We focus on the preventative measures we take, the proactive education approaches that we take to never have to be in that position. We got through till March and sadly had 2 foreign visitors to the Gold Coast drown in March outside of patrol area. And the team takes that really, really hard. They really feel that load heavily, and so it's another, I guess, reminder to retain that vigilance in what they do, and they're an incredibly determined bunch. I'm really proud of the work that they do. I just wanted to give you a taste of a highlight reel of that campaign, just to finish off. It outlines some of the great work that the Corps Comms team did, and this is part of the submission for the Australian Marketing Awards. So just finally, I wanted to outline some of our next steps for the service. My role is about continuous improvement and pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve as a service, and Will, in his role as Chief Lifeguard, plays an integral part of that process. We work together to try and create an exceptional experience for our visitors on our beaches. We take that responsibility really seriously. We're looking at the implementation of AI and camera technology, so we're looking at that, investigating that in our pools, but also on our beaches. It's highly advantageous as a support network for our lifeguards, both and also supports our beaches team with further insights into how they can improve the experience right across the coastline. There's a cross-training of our staff, which has been a tremendous opportunity. We're looking at crossover qualifications to help support the movement of our aquatics and life and ocean staff from one side of the business to another. Infrastructure is a big part of my day, planning with the infrastructure team. We're very conscious that 2024 is not too far away, and it's really important that our lifeguard towers and our facilities look fantastic like they did for the Com Games. So we're working through that strategic process to ensure that all of those are up to scratch and looking their best. One thing that's not up on the slide there, but has been a really important motivation to myself and the team as well, is that gender balance within the service. We've gone from having about 5% of our workforce being female 3 years ago to now sitting at 20%, which is a great step forward, but we've still got some work to do there, and we're very conscious of that. So we're working hard to find ways to attract and draw female staff into our workforce as well. It's a demanding job, but it doesn't mean that we can't continue to strive to find great people to work within the service. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much. Lots of questions. I want to go Councillor Curtis, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Lacastre, and then Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. I was really interested in the bylaw enforcement piece. I didn't realise that was something that you do. And is it more can you issue pins? Do you do that, or is it just?
Through the chair, yes, we technically do have the delegation. The staff do have the delegation to issue pins, but we don't tend to get to that point. There's more. We focus more on that early stages of regulation, where it's about education and informing members of the public about what they can and can't do on the beaches. So the team work more on the proactive get on the proactive foot approach. And if we are faced with challenges, we typically call on the City Inspectorate team to support us with like long-standing problematic personnel.
Sure. Is it mostly dogs, or is there?
Dogs are a challenge.
Yep.
Absolutely. We did a culture survey with the team 3 years ago, and that was, I think, number one on the hit list of stresses was dog ownership. But yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jim, and thank you to your entire team for the work that you do. 20 million people at beachgoers. That there was no drownings last season. Phenomenal, and the work that goes into that from all of the respected workforce is fantastic. So thank you. I've got a couple of quick ones. Do you have a rough idea on how many full-time equivalents we do have within the service or in our workforce?
Through the chair, yes, I do. We've got 58 permanent full-time lifeguards. Then we've got about approximately another 30 part-time permanent staff. Okay. And then we fluctuate through the peak season with up to about 200 casual staff. So if I look at my People Portal account in December, it's usually sitting at about 400 across the aquatics and ocean team. Yep.
And following on to that, I guess, with relation to the peak season, you mentioned the surveillance increases by 8,000 hours. Does that somehow, can you explain to me how that overlaps perhaps with school holidays and things like that? Do you find that even in the peak season, there's peaks within that because of things like school holiday breaks? Is that when you see that increase happen?
Yes, we do. So we define that as from the start of schoolies through until Australia Day weekend, essentially. And within that, you definitely get some or many peaks, not too many troughs, but the schoolies sort of double week now, and then as we roll into sort of the week before Christmas, and then January is an incredibly busy time. It's actually pretty consistent. So to give you a bit of context, this time of year we'll be seeing approximately 50,000 people a day on the beaches, and that goes up to around 200,000 a day counted in peak times. So of that 20 million, you're seeing about 8 million of that in that short space of time visiting on the beach. Yeah,
incredible. Two more questions. Just in relation, you touched on the great relationship that we have with Surf Life Saving Queensland. You mentioned that they have 15% of the surveillance across the year, I guess, working collaboratively with yourself. What does that actually mean? Do they do patrols outside of, I guess, the surveillance time that working with you? Is that a separate thing that they then conduct themselves as well?
Yeah, so essentially how it works, we deliver about 250,000 hours of surveillance per annum. They're delivering sort of about 15% of that number. And what that means is when we get into the peak summer season, the surf club's network comes back online, and they are providing patrol at about 20 of our locations out of those 43 through the summer period on the weekends. So during Monday to Friday, it's the professional lifeguard service at all of 43 locations. We then drop back, and the Surf Lifesaving clubs come in and take over and do that sort of portion of the surveillance for that period of time. Yeah,
awesome. And my last one was just, I also want to give mention, and I believe this would fall under yourself, in relation to your beach access program. It wasn't mentioned today, but I think it's a really important piece that the city should take ownership for, making sure that we have that accessibility for all those in our community to get to the beaches. I'd make note that I've got Ian Dipple Lagoon as part of that program location in my divisional area, and I just wanted to find out through yourself, and I don't know whether it needs to be taken as a question or notice. Obviously, with that peak summer period, there has been instances that occur in the past. I know that you're probably well aware of that. if we were to try to advocate to see, an increase in patrol or an increase of lifesavers or increase of days at those locations, how would we have to? How does the data support that? I guess as far as your allocation, I noted on your map before you've got all the beach locations where you can get real-time data for redeploying, which I think is fantastic. But in the instance of somewhere like this, how does it work for, I guess, making sure that over those peak summer periods, there's adequate staffing by lifeguards at those locations?
So I can provide a partial answer on that, and I may defer to my general manager for the balance of that. But what I'd say is we're part of the communities branch, and my colleagues in the communities branch are responsible for driving the beach access program. What we've identified from coming together under the new structure within the city is that our professional lifeguard team will deliver the service at Ian Dipple Pool moving forward. But for the balance of the sites, I'd probably defer to Kate to provide an answer on that.
Through the Chair, we can certainly provide a more fulsome response in terms of the proposals for the Beach Access Program, which does fall under the Access and Inclusion Plan, which runs through until 2025. But certainly greater access and utilisation of those beaches and the matting is definitely something we are looking to consider in the future strategy.
That's great. Councillor Castro.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm a big fan. I think we're all big fans. The city's big fans of what you do. One question, do we still have the exchange program in place where I know that we're so highly regarded that we send quite a few of our lifeguards across to, Dubai, yeah. So, and if so, where are we doing this, and what's the situation of that exchange?
Yeah, through the Chair. So,
the status of that exchange, sorry.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to inform you that has recommenced post-COVID. The team is heading to Japan at the end of July. There's 5 staff heading to Japan, to Kanagawa Prefecture, the last week of July, to recommence that exchange with us travelling outbound to support the Kanagawa Prefecture in Japan with their operationalising actually a professional lifeguard service for the first time. So I'm actually very privileged to be going myself this time, along with Chief Lifeguard Chris Maynard and 3 lifeguards. Chris and I are going to be working with the Prefecture on the operationalising their first ever professional lifeguard service. And then the staff are going to be engaging, working on the beach with the staff whilst they're there. Kanagawa actually came to us last year as well. That was the first recommencement activity. They brought 8 staff to the Gold Coast, worked on our beaches, engaged with the surf clubs. I think they went on volunteer patrol with the surf clubs and engaged with our staff as well. Obviously had a great experience while they were here. So yeah, we're very pleased to have that recommence, and the staff and myself are very excited to have that opportunity to go to Japan this year.
That's a great outcome. Good question, Councillor Castro.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And the only other thing was, and it's not so much a question, but it's really a comment for any councillors here who haven't actually had the opportunity to attend one of those biannual aquatic boot camps, we'll call it, that you guys go through. Sorry?
You haven't participated before, or I'm assuming you
participated. I'm a pond. Water must never touch my body. No,
okay.
No. But I've actually been down to several over the years. When I was sitting in your chair there, and with this committee. So for any councillors who haven't had the chance to see what these men and women are put through, my word, they are fit, and what they have to do is quite incredible. So, maybe you can offer an invitation to, maybe to anyone who wants to go down, because it's worth seeing, and we're so very proud of what you do and who you are. Thank you, all of you.
Yeah. You're all very welcome to come down to Councillor O'Neill's beautiful backyard on the 26th of June, the morning of the 26th of June. Our full-time permanent lifeguards will be doing their long test, which is the one I had made the mistake of having a crack at a few years ago. But yeah, you're very welcome to join us at the John Cunningham Lifeguard Centre and watch it all unfold. Will assures me that he'll be coming in the first place. So
That's great. We're going to formalise that. It would be great to have. I'd love to go check it out, and I'm sure there's other councillors who'd like to join as well. I've got Councillor Marshall and then Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, talking to the beach access one, I think for Joe, it's a pretty good little innovation fund thing going on. Spoke to Nikki about that, so I think we are working on something as a bit of a prototype, but so more on that in the future. But
way too much winking, Councillor Marshall. You can just speak candidly.
I could speak to it, but I won't speak to it. I don't want to ruin the surprise. But look, I see the surf clubs and Surf Life 7 Queensland had a big push towards drones and using that footage. And I noticed the top line with AI and camera. Is that what you're alluding to there, like where there's more drone footage, I guess, to help surveillance? Is that what the sort of top bullet point?
Yeah, through the chair. So we're looking at a number of technology opportunities, one of those being drones. There's currently a trial being undertaken with Surf Life Saving Queensland and the Department of Fisheries around shark research on the Gold Coast. That's currently where things sort of finish at the moment. But yeah, that's an opportunity we're looking at investigating further. One of the critical pieces which also creates a tremendous opportunity for our customer interface team. So the app that we've developed in partnership, or they've done the heavy lifting for sure, is extending our camera network on the beaches, giving people an opportunity to have more visibility, giving our staff a greater opportunity to have visibility for surveillance and safety. That's a real priority area for us to grow that network for sure. It's highly advantageous and provides us with a tremendous amount of information. And layered onto that is people counting. Obviously, the technology is somewhat challenged at the moment in that space in open environments because a lot of it's at distance. But there's a lot of work being done. Our tech partner is supporting us with potential opportunities in that space as well.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know whether it happens in other areas, but certainly at the Rainbow Bay, at the beach at Rainbow Bay, the lifeguards seem to have a lot of problems with boogie boards, surfboards, now hydrofoils, coming into the bathing area. And they really don't have, doesn't seem that they have a lot of jurisdiction over that. But I was just wondering, when you mentioned that they do have the ability to actually, give pins out, I'm just wondering. But and it can get volatile. I mean, we've had situations where we've had brawls on the beach and things like that. So just get your take on that. Is it anywhere apart from Rainbow Bay, because it's sort of that area is suited to that? But I'm sure that those craft are other areas and other beaches.
Yeah, through the chair, certainly we're seeing a growth in the types of watercraft that we're seeing on our beaches on the Gold Coast. Case in point, the electric hoverboards, for want of a better term. They are, very dangerous given the velocity they can travel at. Rainbow Bay is actually the second busiest location on the Gold Coast now. We've had to, put in a significant greater number of staff and patrol surveillance hours in that area to try and help support with that surveillance and policing of the bathing area. So yeah, there's a real overlay in between the craft user and the general sort of swimmer and bather. But we're working with our beaches team actually, that they've developed some tremendous content around craft etiquette. Very engaging. Again, went to market and created some tremendously engaging content to help push out some of that safety messaging. But yeah, it's an area of priority for us. We need to get a lot more proactive, I think, in being out on the water, utilising our jet ski program to try and support with increasing the safety of beach users down in that area.
Another thing that comes up continually through our stewardship committee with the surfing reserve is people going out without leg ropes on boards. And again, I don't think that the lifeguards have jurisdiction to tell people they have to wear leg ropes. Have you got any more information about that?
Yes, you're right, Councillor O'Neill, that we don't have the jurisdiction to tell people to use leg ropes. We certainly try to work with the beaches team and the surf team to promote those messages. Typically, if a board washes through the flags from someone who they tend to not see that board till the end of the day. That's typically the stance we take at the moment. I'm sure you can appreciate it's very hard for a lifeguard to walk around with a pin machine and start issuing pins. Their priority is obviously the water and the safety of those in the water. Yeah, but certainly some good feedback. Thank you. We'll take that away and look at any ways we can improve in that area and look at some different strategies.
And that surf etiquette, I think, has been really well received, and it's online in a lot of areas. Our new boards with the animated surf etiquette signs look fantastic, and I think it's maybe not helpful for the older surfers who think that they know everything anyway. But yeah, it's really good for the young crowd.
I had a question just about you touched on 28 beaches are patrolled during winter and then 43 in summer. You've seen a significant increase in beach usage. Is that 28 to 43 likely to change, or is there fluctuating trends that will mean some beaches have traditionally been closed in winter will now be open in winter? Or
through the chair or to the chair, we have seen obviously some changes in the locations that are becoming more prevalent. I certainly think central through the southern area of the coast, we're starting to see a big lift in utilisation on those beaches outside of our traditional seasons. So we have augmented the 28 that are open. The additional surveillance hours we received last year through the budget enable us to be a bit more agile as to where we opened and why we opened. But it's an ever-evolving situation. I don't think, even when I started 2.5 years ago, that I could have envisaged the numbers of people that we're seeing and the growth we've seen in the last 2 years. So we're constantly assessing and reviewing where we need to operate and having to come back and obviously look for that support from senior management and obviously from council in relation to budget. So yeah, I'll keep pushing for that support.
Right. So you mentioned this idea of this 8,000 additional surveillance hours, and it's got us to a certain point. Is that a new normal now, or is that a...
Yes, that's the new norm. Yes, that's been an ongoing investment into our budget that allows us to continue that level of service now moving forward.
And what should councillors expect moving into the coming 24 months, do you think? It's obviously a very big question, but
yeah. Look, I'd suggest that we need to extend the network. We look at our tower planning strategy has identified the Burleigh stretch as an area of becoming, more and more utilised. We've got 2 substantial towers going in that area in the very near future, which will bring a big influx, and that helped us inform us with the Alexandra Avenue. We had 3 significant towers go in behind that location with no access to a beach within 800 metres either way. So we identified that. We're seeing those come up more and more. So we work with our planning department and the city investment team. We have insights into the data that they're collecting now on where people are travelling to, why they're travelling there, what demographics are travelling there, and that's helping inform us on where we go next. So that strategy was developed about 4 years ago, and quite honestly, we've had to go back to the drawing board again and look at, where do we go next, because we just haven't been able to, I guess, I don't think anyone did envisage seeing the growth that we've seen.
I wonder if maybe just a general query to you, Jody, that before the next kind of spring season starts, or just as the spring season starts, we might have a report that talks a little bit about that tower management and some of those resources. So as we kind of come into the next, it's always quite hard, October to March being a really busy time. It's probably best to plan almost in advance of that for the following budget.
Absolutely.
So I've got Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Doran.
I just thought of something. A couple of years ago, we actually moved the tower from Balinga, out the front of Balinga Surf Club, up to Currumbin, which it would badly needed at Currumbin, being, quite a busy beach. There was always talk of having a small tower, because they actually always patrol from the beach at Balinga anyway, but putting a smaller tower there, that's sort of never eventuated. You haven't got any information on that, have you?
Through the chair, we certainly haven't forgotten, Councillor O'Neill. Our intention is to purchase some mobile towers which we can utilise at those locations during peak seasons. There's a patrol that continues to be at that beach by the professional lifeguard team, and that will always be the case. And then obviously it's catered to by the surf clubs in the summertime. But yeah, we have every intention of bringing a mobile tower there just to create a beacon of understanding that there is a patrol there. Yes, absolutely.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, it was more just a question from my own sort of interest. Is there a minimum standard, like a minimum person needed for each tower? You know, some towers will have 2 or 3. Others will just have the single person, and obviously when they go to lunch, you have to have the lunches person sort of sweep through. But I just wasn't sure whether there was tower-specific numbers or just purely each tower needed to have at least one.
Through the chair, yeah. So every tower has a plan in relation to the labour implementation at the location. So part of that 8,000 hours that was requested for last financial year was included a mitigation strategy for staff risk. So ensuring that we had 2 people working at isolated locations at all time. They weren't alone in case something did occur. And when the winter months come round, we do drop back to 1 person at some locations, but it's only in those locations where they've got a fast response to support. But every tower has an operational outline of how many staff for the period of the year, and then that fluctuates obviously based on stress levels from the utilisation of the beach.
Perfect, thanks.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jim. I'm always intrigued when we're presented with statistics, and I'm curious as to how you quantify the number of visitors to the beaches. I think it was just under 20 million. Please
explain. Yeah, through the chair. So that actually only...
You're like an abacus, right?
Yeah, correct, yeah. Just throw it up. No, through the chair. So that's actually only the count taken by the professional lifeguard service. That doesn't include that taken by the volunteer surf clubs when they do their patrol as well. We envisage that number is closer to about 35 million than 20. How we validate that data is we engage with our beaches team. The beaches team use sim data technology to overlay on top of that manual count that's done by the lifeguards. And in addition to that, they've started to utilise drone counting through Griffith University to validate that and quantify that number. So we layer on those 3 various counts, and then that's calibrated and provides us with a number. So we are still the primary provider of that number, and the other layers of technology have validated that we're basically within about 90% accuracy on that count year on year.
Thank you. And one last question, if I could give Will a chance to shine.
Yes.
Why are males between 18 and 30 the most vulnerable in our surf?
Through the chair. Thanks for the question. I think it's maybe the bravado factor. They think they're tougher or stronger, or they don't actually think at all. But that definitely was the...
Well, they do think it's not about safety. Go on.
Yeah, no, it definitely was the demographic where we had most of our problems, and that campaign was, key in correcting that, making it better. Thank you.
Fantastic. If there's no further questions, Jim, Will, Kate, great work. It's super exciting. It's something we're really proud of. And I've got to say, Councillor Castro's questions about the establishment of the first ever patrol team in Kanagawa Prefecture in Japan is pretty exciting for us. And it's lovely that the city is not just keeping our beaches safe, but contributing to another nation keeping their beaches safe as well. That's pretty special. We'd love to hear a bit more about that in a future report. Councillor Wilkinson's going to move the presentation or note the presentation. Councillor Martin's going to second that motion. I think it's that council receives and notes the presentation. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much
for your work. We've just been going for 2 hours. We're going to take a short toilet break, 5 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and deal with the Arts Development Fund and the final item on the agenda. So quick 5 minutes, and then we'll be back. Thank you for turning the live streaming back on. Welcome back, everyone. Quick break, all sorted. Love to invite Fleur McMenamin and Kate McLeod up to talk about the Arts Development Fund. This item was previously in closed session. It's not going to be in closed sessions. We've adopted this budget, and it is no longer there's no longer any reasonable grounds for us to keep it closed. So we'll present in the open session. Sorry, question? The budget just got adopted, mate, so it's all done. Please, yeah, question.
The community partnerships is completely different, but I understand that's got to run through full council before it can be communicated. That doesn't capture any of this information.
So the budget adoption meeting we had on Friday allocates the only confidential element of this report.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Last month we presented the 10-year history of arts and culture in the city, which has driven significant artistic, social, wellbeing, economic and cultural outcomes for the city. As a reminder, satisfaction with arts and culture is one of the measures in our city plan, with 87% of residents agreeing arts and culture helps them enjoy a greater quality of life, and 79% of residents agreeing arts and culture helps them to feel part of our community. So today we're coming back, as we said we would last time, to talk around the Arts Development Fund and to seek approval for the funding and also for the endorsement of the guidelines. That's not a good sign. There we go. So just a reminder, in the paper we're looking at, sorry, just 1 second. Is it possible to get the screen showing the slides? So I've just got my name reflecting back at me, which isn't helping. Confirmation of the $700,000 to be allocated from the Community Grants Program. As I said, endorsement of the Arts Development Guidelines, and also the nomination for the chair of this committee to be nominated as the observer for those Arts Development Fund committee meetings. Before I proceed, though, we were going to invite Nikki Moore, so General Manager of the Office of the CEO, just to present a little bit more on the community grants. Obviously, the Arts Development Fund forms part of it, and obviously with the discussions at GAF earlier last week, just making sure that there's clarity on how the Arts Development Fund sits within the community grants policy. Are you flicking, Nikki, or am I?
I can do it. Yep, Andy can drive. So through the chair, I won't labour on, but in short, the funded entity review found that we were delivering grant programs all over the city for lots of different reasons and through many different governance mechanisms, and it led to a lack of oversight and cohesion in terms of outcomes. What that meant was that we did a piece of work which was run concurrently with the establishment of Experience Gold Coast to say, let's own a process where all of our grant making is done in accordance with a consistent methodology and consistent gateways. So what that meant was we embarked upon a process to understand all the grant making that was done in the city, and that's really where we are at the moment. One important point to note is community grants are different to other grant making that is done in the city, and they have other legislative requirements that other grant making doesn't have. When we establish a grants process, a council resolution is required. With a community grant, you can only provide those to not-profit organisations, and it is one of the only policies that council ever adopts that council cannot resolve around. So if council wants to provide a grant that is outside of the community grants policy, then it first needs to amend the community grants policy before it can issue the grant. It can't just resolve it on the floor. So community grants sort of sits in a bucket on its own, but it falls in the broader umbrella of grant making that the city undertakes. The relevance for the purposes here is that the Arts Fund funds some community organisations, but that's not its primary purpose, and therefore it's a subset of that grant making umbrella. The Office of the CEO controls the process for the governance and the process for grant making in the city, and then the subject matter experts obviously deliver the outcomes that council endorses. So for the purposes of this program, what that meant when we did the collation of all the funding was that EGC got the 1.5 for its own outcomes. they will deliver that in accordance with their own governance, but with endorsed guidelines by council. The Arts Fund is not a community grants program. Why? Because its primary purpose is not to fund community organisations. And so for the purposes of the community grants policy, we consider it outside the scope of that policy, and it enables the Arts Fund to be able to fund individuals and things that can really dip into the outcomes that that program is trying to achieve. And then the community grants programs too, which we deliberated the other day, then are guided by the community grants policy and can only be provided to community organisations. And I can talk budgets and things if you want, Councillor, but really...
I reckon we're going to try and stay out of the budget. Yeah. There's a separate piece on budget, but the important thing to remember is that the amount that is proposed to be allocated in this report has not changed through any other process we've done, and on Friday, that's the amount that we're talking about today is what we adopted. I wanted to ask you just a question to clarify. Community organisations aren't precluded from participating in this arts program.
Correct.
So they can still participate. It's just that not exclusive to community organisations.
Correct. So I think the prevailing view is the highest and best outcome would be to enable community organisations to come through the program where it's applicable. Probably the question that we need to consider when we present these guidelines back to council for community grants is whether or not there's a view that council would like to preclude those organisations from coming in through the community grants program. So we actively push them to that program, or we just acknowledge that there might be a little bit of duplication. We time the programs in such a way that we can actually have some level of manoeuvrability for those groups between the programs so that we can actually achieve the best outcome with the budget that's been allocated.
Great. So I reckon we'll keep going through the presentation and then come back to questions later, if that's okay. Was there anything else you needed to add? Great. Okay, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, going the wrong way. Yeah. As Nikki said. So in terms of previous state, just to recap, the city has historically funded around $1 million into both the triennial funding and RADF program. And the proposed new Arts Development Fund is very much a rinse and repeat in terms of what has been there previously. So through the triennial funding program, $700,000 historically for organisations, and that runs up in October of this year. And it's for that reason that we're needing to push this Arts Development Fund forward now, rather than waiting for the EGC component that Nikki just spoke to being ready. Happily, 8 of the 12 triennial funded organisations, the large ones, were successful in the recent considerations by the GAF committee. The RADF program, or Regional Arts Development Fund, historically $300,000, $100,000 historically coming from Arts Queensland, and as previously discussed in committee, we are looking to work or look at opportunities to work with Arts Queensland around that $100,000 coming in through another mechanism, and again that RADF program drawing to a close in July, so very, very soon. In terms of historical funding allocations or the apportionment of that RADF funding over the previous 2 financial years, you can see quite considerably the largest component being individual and sole traders. So this is a different cohort from that came forward for the partnerships funding in the last week. We would expect, and the way that the guidelines have been written, which again is in line with how this program was previously governed, that the apportionment would be largely similar as we move forward with the proposals. So the proposed Arts Development Fund, as I said, is $700,000, which was identified in the January 23 initial community grants proposal, so was loosely endorsed, and we're coming here for that final endorsement today. As I said, very much a rinse and repeat, so the 3 columns on the left being the arts project, which is very much along the lines of the RADF program, with funding, as you can see on the screen, and with the arts partnership component being a refresh of the triennial triennial funding. As I've already said, a large number of those triennial funded organisations have moved on to bigger and better things and have now got more sustaining funding going forward and through the partnerships program as well. So the assessment, as set out in the forward papers, very much around establishing that committee, so that external panel of experts being able to review and make determinations for funding. So that peer assessment model with a counsellor, hopefully, invited to observe that panel, with committee recommendations submitted to the CEO's delegate for approval. In terms of the criteria, very much looking at capacity, merit, reach and benefit, and making sure that we are achieving, as we have done in previous years and with the 10-year positive outcomes that we have delivered so far through arts and culture development, looking at value for money and delivering some sustainable elements for outcomes for the community. So, back to original slide in terms of the request of committee today, and I'm going to take questions through the chair.
Right. Questions? So what would help? I think what would help, can we go back to the slide where you talked about the two different streams? That one there, yeah. So the left-hand side is the $300,000 per year, $300,000 per year total amount, and they're smaller grants. This is replacing the errata program, which is examples like Amy Shark got her first music video, or third music video produced for the song that she won the QMA for, the Queensland Music Award. And it's people like her. I mean, obviously we gave away 20 or 30 grants in that process that year, but she came out of that and ended up being quite good. That's the sort of little operator that we expect, and I say little, not meant to be disrespectfully, that you expect to be on that left-hand side of the game.
That's correct, Chair. So the grassroots funding that enables individuals primarily, with other smaller organisations, to really develop their art form and then to elevate and to hopefully get onto a bigger platform.
And traditionally, the right-hand side, triennial funding, is organisations like, I think the Gold Coast Music Awards was funded through the right-hand side previously, and they weren't in the other process. So it's likely that an organisation like that, which are not massive, but they're a arts development organisation, would apply on that right-hand side.
That is correct, Chair. I'll ask Fleur to jump in to provide a little more detail, but organisations like the Farm have come through that triennial funding, and you will have heard them present to committee previously.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Yes, so we have a number of very successful organisations, many of whom you saw through the community partnerships pictures previously. So the triennial funding has historically funded organisations up to $150,000 a year for multi-year funding. This new proposed state would mean that new and emerging organisations could receive funding for up to $80,000 a year. So organisations who are, including organisations who are for-profit, would still be able to apply for multi-year operational funding, and that really creates that pathway through to those larger, performing organisations delivering large-scale benefits, whereas the project funding is really for those individuals and smaller arts organisations looking to, fund smaller projects, with examples like Amy Shark doing a single, which then became very successful, and the project funding is really based for those smaller one-off projects.
Great. Awesome. The other question I had is, there's some information in the guidelines that talk about, I think it's on page 139 of the report, and it says who can't apply. And the line that I'm talking about, organisations receiving funding through the community partnerships or community projects fund programs can't apply under this. One thing I was hoping to have happen is I think that bullet point probably should be removed. And the reason I make that comment is because I think that the arts sector on the coast is so collaborative an approach and necessarily involves an element of experimentation. So the core activity of an arts organisation might be established such that the Farm is creating X amount of, the Farm being a theatrical arts organisation, creating a certain core business, but then there might be something experimental where they're in partnership with another person, and it occurs to me that that experimental element probably should come through something that's separate to their core activity. Is there any objection from you guys omitting that item?
Thanks, Chair. We have considered this. The guidelines were actually written prior to the community partnerships pitches and that particular program being considered. I believe that previously the higher tier of the triennial fund program were not able to apply for project funding just because that would, not allow enough money for other one-off projects. However, since the new developments, we can certainly consider looking at how that might be amended into the future. I would suggest that organisations receiving funding through the Community Partnerships or Community Projects Fund programs would not be funded through the Arts Development Fund for the same project.
Correct. Yeah, so it would need to be a separate element of their activity, not the same project.
Yes, we could certainly consider that.
Before we move on, Nikki, is there anything legislatively that would prevent us from making that amendment? Great. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Through the chair. So just a question on the assessment, and so I note in the report, I think we're page 138 and 139, most of those are a peer-assessed group that resolve the grant funding, so it's only the sub $2,000 grant that is officer approved. I probably was leaning towards the small grants of under 5,000. Was interested why that goes to peer group. I would have probably thought that would be within the threshold of officer delegation. I don't know if there's a statutory requirement as to why, but did you go through that process around that small grant being officer delegation, and why did it end up in the kind of bigger pool?
Through the chair, I would certainly support that. I have overseen other RADF programs in other local governments previously, and being very low risk, I believe that that could be certainly considered. I think the original intent was to replicate what's currently delivered so that all of our applicants understand how they're assessed. However, anything under $5,000 I would certainly support being, a very robust officer assessed process.
So just a question about that exact thing. So in my head, the idea of this under 2,000 occurs to me. Professional development might be a local musician attending Big Sound and having their conference ticket covered. Is that the sort of thing that they might apply for, or could you give me an example what might be professional development for someone?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it would be attendance of any non-accredited training or professional development, skills development. So somebody wanting to attend Big Sound, somebody wanting to attend a screen film writing course in Melbourne, for example, somebody wanting to attend CIAF, the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair, that they're all sort of projects, as long as they were eligible, would be considered for funding under $2,000 to provide travel costs and accommodation and logistics, basically. Logistics
associated with that. Great. Sorry, back to you, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you. And so just to follow on from that, because I see a larger arts project fund is one round per year, and the other, that's in the arts project, and then the other one is multi-year agreement. So I just wonder whether it's too much red tape for the sub $5,000. I think there would be, I would support that the city officers could make recommendation for that rolling grant stream of up to $5,000, unless I think it would cut red tape, ability to get it to artists quicker, as long as there's a robust process in place. So it would be my view that we could loosen the reins.
The only challenge I can think in my mind about doing what you propose is it occurs to me that category will be oversubscribed given the magnitude of arts activity, and having a peer assessed committee process actually enables us to differentiate between one over another with some accountability and maybe circumvent some complaints that might be made.
That's right, Jay. Really, it's about the fact that officers assisting applicants with their applications are held at arm's length, so that it is very much a independent, peer assessed model of, sort of recommending the use of public funds.
Yeah.
However, I think there could be an example or a scenario where if the assessment criteria and the matrix was robust and then it went through to the CEO's delegate for approval, that could be considered. But yes, you're right. The intention is really just to have that sort of independent oversight on art can be very subjective. So, that arm's length approach to deciding on who gets funded for, projects of a artistic nature is really the question at hand.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So on that basis, makes a lot of sense. Happy to support the original proposed if that is the view. Yep.
It's a good question. Trying to streamline it is important. I had a question about, there was a program that Council has previously championed, which was a partnership between the music industry and the graphic industry, where we partnered during COVID, I believe, graphic designers up with musicians to create merch to generate new revenue sources. Is it proposed that that sort of idea would be formed through this small grant process, or is that potentially going to be delivered through a different program?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so the Music Merch Collab program was a specific COVID response for musicians to partner with designers to sell their merchandise, because touring was very difficult, so that they provided
non-existent
provided an opportunity for bands to sell online and through digital retail. This is really something that would be considered as part of these programs now. So anybody wanting to undertake that kind of project would be directed through to these small grants.
Fantastic. That's great. Any other questions? If there's no other questions, I'm going to move the item with that slight change on page 139, which is that organisations receiving funding through the community partnerships and community projects fund programs are no longer excluded from applying. So do we need to change that in the resolution? Yeah. So the Council endorsed the Arts Development Fund guidelines as presented in attachment 1 with the omission of previous community partnerships grant recipients not being excluded. Sorry, Councillor Martin, question.
Just a question on that change. No problem supporting that, but when it is being considered, would it be known if an applicant has received funding through another, so it's considered as a whole of scope?
Very open to definitely it being considered. I think there should be a weighting on whether it is considered or not, and I think we would do that as a matter of course anyway. But what I'm hoping to have happen is success breeds success. So when an arts organisation is successful in one area and it's going really well, that creative flow builds other creative activity. And I would hate to think that someone who's in a really good space of, understanding the marketplace to which they're performing or marketing, and then being prohibited from being supported to deliver some new program just because they were successful somewhere else. That's what I'm trying to. I would hate to think they weren't considered, but to me that creative flow piece is actually really quite important. Making sure that they can continue to grow experimentally. Have I been clear enough with that wording?
It might be potentially worth considering, just picking up on Fleur's point, whether or not you want to specify that we're not funding the same project, so that we're actually saying if you receive funding, you're not excluded for a new project. So you might get 4 grants from council a year, but it might be for 4 different projects.
So maybe we say, with the omission of previous community grant recipients, to not be excluded for new projects. Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
Clear as mud for committee members? The omission is the line on page 139. The guidelines will be adopted in full with the omission of that exclusion. Do you want to change the words? I've got no doubt I can manage my fascination with the arts sector. All right, I'm happy to move that if I may have a seconder. Councillor Martin. Fantastic. It's very exciting to see that this program is being supported by the committee and will continue to grow arts sector participation and, some of our emerging artists with things like music videos and merchandise collaborations and arts experiences that might, again, continue to grow the reputation of our city as a place where arts is celebrated and grown. We're on the up and up in that space, and I'm pretty excited to see this program continue. Did anyone want to speak against the motion? All those in favour? That motion is carried. Okay, Fleur, thank you very much. And Jodie. I think we've got Jeff. I don't know what you're doing at our committee. Goodness gracious. An imposter has entered the building. My understanding is that because this relates to a park, but also involves potentially a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion may prejudice the interests of the local government, we have to move to close. May I have a mover to closed on those basis? Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Curtis. All those in favour? That motion is carried. We'll be in close. Please turn off the streaming. Just turn the streaming back on. Top stuff. Thank you. Okay, so we've had a pretty significant discussion in closed session, and we have a changed recommendation. The motion was proposed by Councillor Castro and was seconded by Councillor Martin. It's a changed motion, and when it hits the just get you to press OK so we can see what we actually took resolving. Not that one, the other one here. Yeah, that's great. I think we've got the words that we wanted. Councillor Castro, do you want to open debate, please?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, obviously the report's on grey pages, so limited as to what I can say, but let's just say that the recommendation that's before us is something that I believe is the right way to go, given that this is community parkland, and based on the report and the discussion we've had today, I don't believe that what was being proposed is conducive to a community open space.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic.
To community parklands. Yeah, that's really all I can say. I'm just trying to work out what I can say. And what
I appreciate that paper's confidential. Councillor Doran, did you want to articulate your comments about abstaining?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll be abstaining in the vote, not as a particular position on any potential use of the site or directly regarding the site itself, but I feel as if the report provided to the committee didn't properly advise the committee as to the details we need to make an informed decision. I feel like it references parts of the industry and also previous resolutions that I don't feel is relevant, and I don't feel as if I had the full and complete information to be able to make a decision today. Fantastic. Does anyone want to speak for the motion? Councillor Martin.
Just wanted to speak for the motion in that supportive of the principle. Obviously, this site was, and spoken to the local councillor, we've taken that on board and support the local councillor in that that's not the right site, but pleased that we can progress the master planning for future use through the Carrara Sports Precinct and also the site that was considered.
Great. Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Councillor Castro, you get to close debate if you like. In the absence of you closing debate, I will say that it's been great having everyone contribute, ask good questions about a report that I think, there's no doubt that our city is serious about attracting sport investment in the city. It's definitely something that's really important, but it's important as well for us to make sure that's not inconsistent with community expectations and also community expectations relating to open space. And so whilst, I think there's unequivocal support in this committee and the committee that's later on this afternoon, the Economy, Tourism and Events Committee, about wanting to attract great investments in the city, it's actually really important that that doesn't come at the cost of the general community or some of those expectations that have been set in place over many years. And with that done, I will ask for the vote. Those in favour of the motion, raise. Division.
Councillor Tozer, Councillor Curtis, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Martin, Councillor Lacastra, Councillor Marshall.
Those against? No. Councillor Doran, would you like to be noted as abstained? Yep. Can we note Councillor Doran abstained? That motion is carried. Is there any general business today? I'll declare the meeting closed at 12:59, just in time for ETE to start at 1 o'clock. Come on.